the future leaders. They are the tomorrow.
In Nairobi, Monica is still searching for her brother, Kalani. Every few weeks, she goes to check the hospital morgues, but she hasn't given up hope of finding him alive. And she has a message, an appeal to those who might be holding him.
I can say this, eh?
I can say this. Whoever took our boy, we beg you, please return him home. And if he wronged you or did something bad to you, we ask you to forgive him. Just forgive us. That's all.
This edition of Assignment was presented by me, Michael Kaloki. The producer was Alex Last.
That was Assignment from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho, and this is CBC Radio 1.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We are live downtown at our studios here at CBC. Thanks for joining us on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, on the app and on YouTube this morning. In Winnipeg today, a high of 17 degrees for our Thursday. 30% chance of some drizzle this morning and late this afternoon as well. Brown and cloudy, 60% chance of a drizzly morning, a high of 14. And just setting up your day up in Thompson, Manitoba, cloudy and a high of 17. You're going to have a mix of sun and cloud, by the way. No drizzle in your forecast for this morning at least, but there could be a little bit of fog. Let's say good morning to the team. Everybody's in. Brad Lillies, good morning. Brad is our YouTube and VMix producer, so you can say hello to him on the stream if you're watching the show. Joshua Taifer is behind the controls this morning once again. Good morning. Abby Adiyemi also in our control room. Abby's going to be covering the forecast on the air through the program. And Mr. Corey Funk is here directing Information Radio, and we will hear him covering your commute here on CBC. Okay, let's get into the news. Heather Wells is here too. It's 2 minutes to 6 o'clock, and she has headlines.
Good morning. Well, a woman is in hospital with serious injuries after being hit by the driver of a vehicle outside a Sikh temple. It happened Monday night as she was trying to cross King Edward Street. The Gurdwara there serves a growing population in northwest Winnipeg. Many people walk or bike to worship and have to cross the busy road. Harpal Kaur Sidhu lives nearby and says the collision highlights the need for safety improvements. A Manitoba man who was prescribed medication to treat his arthritis claims he suffered blood clots and other side effects from the drug. He is now suing the pharmaceutical company AbbVie that makes the medication called Rinvoq. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
In our program this morning, in addition to what you're going to hear on the news through the show, we do have the mayor of the city of Winnipeg on. So that's our regular monthly interview with him. It's the first after the summer break. So Scott Gillingham is going to be here. We're going to ask him about the protest rules in Winnipeg, about his call for bail reforms in this country, and also we're going to ask him more about that new federal housing announcement and if we can get any more information about where these locations are going to be for the new housing. Plus, Dr. Raj Bardwaj, we have a medical column today, all about what you need to know about food and medication interactions. So if you're up early having maybe a pill, you want to hear that later.
Today on Q.
I'm Talia Schlanger in for Tom Power. You might know Zasha Mamet as Shoshana from Girls. What? She'll share stories from her new memoir, including her grueling days auditioning for shows and why she compares being an artist to having a disease.
Who goes to get tacos on a date?
Q. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Supporters of Jimmy Kimmel are coming to his defense.
Jimmy Kimmel stays, Trump must go.
Fans protest outside the Los Angeles studio where Jimmy Kimmel Live broadcasts. They are upset ABC has pulled the show off the air over comments he made about Charlie Kirk's death. Their protest is being countered by praise from U.S. President Donald Trump. Commenting on social media, he says ABC is courageous for pulling the show. Steve Futterman has more.
This is the comment on Monday night that led to Jimmy Kimmel's indefinite suspension.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from.
Kimmel never actually says that Charlie Kirk's killer is a member of the MAGA movement, but does suggest that MAGA members are trying to use Kirk's killing to help their cause. Just before last night's taping was to start, ABC said there would be no show. This fan was outside the studio.
It didn't happen this morning. It was like right before the taping started.
Trump was in the UK when the news broke. He celebrated on social media, saying Kimmel, who he has been feuding with for years, has zero talent. ABC's decision came after around 60 affiliates said they would stop carrying Kimmel's show indefinitely. Brendan Carr, the head of the Federal Communications Commission and a Trump ally, says late-night talk shows have changed.
They went from being court jesters that would make fun of everybody in power to being court clerics and enforcing a very narrow political ideology.
Democratic Senate leader Chuck Schumer says the move sets a dangerous precedent.
Trump and his allies seem to want to shut down speech that they don't like to hear.
And last night on many ABC affiliates, instead of Jimmy Kimmel, the network ran an episode of Celebrity Family Feud. Steve Futterman, CBC News, Los Angeles.
Donald Trump says he plans to designate Antifa as a major terrorist organization. The term is shorthand for far-left anti-fascist militant groups. Antifa is more of a decentralized movement, not a single organization. The U.S. president called them a sick, dangerous, radical left disaster. Trump is currently on a state visit to the United Kingdom. After yesterday's pomp, today is politics. Bagpipes hail the arrival of the U.S. president at Chequers. The Prime Minister's country estate is the location of today's meeting with Keir Starmer. Trump is on the second and final day of his state visit to the UK. The two leaders are getting down to politics after yesterday's focus on British pageantry. Trade, along with the wars in Ukraine and Gaza, will be the focus of their talks. Prime Minister Mark Carney heads to Mexico this morning. His trip is meant to renew ties with one of Canada's top export markets. As Catherine Tunney reports, this year is the beginning of a review process for the North American Free Trade Agreement.
The last time the leaders of Canada and Mexico met, Prime Minister Mark Carney walked away with a soccer ball. A reminder of something the three North American countries can agree on, hosting the World Cup next year.
An area where Mexico, Canada, and our third co-host,
yes, right.
the other president, we are totally aligned in our excitement, enthusiasm.
Finding more alignment is the name of the game today, when Carney and Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum meet face-to-face. Government officials say the goal of this trip is to expand Canada-Mexico partnerships in security, infrastructure, energy, and of course trade, and to underscore support as U.S. President Donald Trump stirs up economic uncertainty on the continent, especially after Canadian politicians suggested Mexico be dropped from the trade pact.
Donald Trump tried to put a wedge between us. We took the bait.
Flavio Volpe is a member of the Prime Minister's Council on Canada-U.S. relations.
It's very important to meet Mexicans face to face and say we're co-invested in the future here. But like in any good long-term relationship, you're going to have days where you're at each other, but you're going to have each other's back.
A relationship that's never been more important, with the Canada-U.S.-Mexico trade agreement up for review. Catherine Tunney, CBC News, Ottawa.
As the Prime Minister heads to Mexico, CBC News is learning more about the hunt for a Canadian thought to be hiding in that country. Ryan Wedding was once a Team Canada Olympian. He is now listed as one of the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives. As Thomas Daigle reports, Mexico's president is under pressure to do more to ensure he's caught.
We hope she will soon take action against major narco-traffickers like Ryan Wedding.
A senior U.S. government official recently demanding the Mexican president intervene to ensure the arrest of an Ontario-born fugitive. Authorities say Ryan Wedding leads a transnational drug trafficking empire linked to the notorious Sinaloa cartel. all while benefiting from high-level help in Mexico, according to the State Department's Cartwright Weiland.
The cartels and government officials are working in tandem to allow for him to evade capture.
Now, CBC News has learned Mexico has assigned its own federal agents to a task force hunting for Wedding. Months ago, his right-hand man was arrested near Guadalajara in a dramatic operation involving the Mexican Navy, who now appear likely to be involved in this search as well.
Ryan Wedding to the line.
Once an Olympic snowboarder, Wedding has a $10 million bounty on his head as one of the FBI's most wanted.
They will get him eventually.
Former DEA International Operations Chief Mike Vigil says it's not a matter of if the 6'3" former athlete is captured, but when.
If he is in Mexico, he's going to stand out.
U.S. prosecutors want Wedding extradited to face charges related to cocaine trafficking and murder. Thomas Dagg, CBC News, Toronto.
Canada's regulator is about to begin a hearing on which Canadian content obligations apply to music streamers like Spotify. Streaming services argue their current efforts to promote Canadian culture and the royalties they pay are good enough. Radio broadcasters also want the CRTC to have a lighter regulatory touch. Both sides will make their arguments during 5 days of hearings in Gatineau. It's part of a series of CRTC proceedings to implement the Online Streaming Act. Australia is embracing some ambitious carbon emission reduction targets. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says he intends to reduce greenhouse gases by as much as 70% from 2005 levels. His target is the year 2035.
This is a responsible target, backed by the science, backed by a practical plan to get there, and built on proven technology. It's the right target to protect our environment, to protect and advance our economy and jobs, and to ensure that we act in our national interest and in the interest of this and future generations.
Australia is one of the world's worst polluters on a per capita basis. It has been criticized for its reliance on fossil fuels. A Nova Scotia woman says she no longer wants to die. Jennifer Brady wanted medical assistance in dying. There was no treatment for her disease in Nova Scotia, and she'd been denied out-of-province care. But as Angela McIver explains, she recently had surgery in the U.S., with the province covering the cost.
Welcome aboard United Express. For Jennifer Brady, this flight marks the turning point in a 6-year fight for her life.
It's been, a constant battle to get here.
Brady has lymphedema, a chronic disease that causes fluid buildup in her legs. After being repeatedly denied out-of-province care by the Nova Scotia Health Department, last May she applied for medical assistance in dying. Doctors went to bat for her, and then last fall came a major court win. A judge ruled she was treated unfairly by health officials, clearing the path for surgery in New Jersey this past July, paid for by the province.
Hey, Jennifer.
Hey, it's so nice to see you.
It's so good to see you.
Dr. Joseph Diane is a world expert in lymphedema care based in New Jersey. He's doing procedures every week that don't occur in Nova Scotia and are rare in the rest of Canada. His patient roster now includes Brady.
When you see a patient that's actually their life's been transformed, they've actually had a real improvement. It's a huge gift.
After a successful surgery, Brady is now back home in Halifax, moving around better than expected, and she no longer wants to die.
It's really scary thinking and looking back that I was in such a dark place, that I was contemplating that.
Nova Scotia has a new review process for complex cases, and the Auditor General has begun a formal review of out-of-province care, thanks to Brady's fight. Angela McIver, CBC News, Halifax.
There is more on Jennifer Brady's story at cbcnews.ca. It's on our main page. That is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. How you doing today? Thursday, September 18th. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio, and you're on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. We're going to have a look at the weather in a moment. We'll get those maps up for you. Abby's going to be in to walk us through the day. It's already raining in part of the province. It's misty in Brandon, and we have had some early morning rain in Dauphin. Actually, it looks like that's now stopped. But in Winnipeg, currently, the temperature is 14 degrees. This hour on the show, we are going to be hearing from a Winnipegger who's going to be representing Canada at the International Bowling Federation World Championships coming up in Hong Kong. And she is not only that, she's no stranger to the stage of success. She has 6 times been named the best bowler here in Manitoba. So we're going to hear more from her about the sport and also break some misconceptions about what you think about bowling. In addition, this hour we will, to Serious Matters, get you updated on what's happening in Gaza. The Israeli military, as you may have heard on World Report, is pushing in with its incursion on Gaza City. So we're going to go to Ramallah and talk to a journalist and writer there about the impact that it is having on those on the ground. So we'll get that insight later ahead this hour as well. Right now, though, Heather Wells is in with developments on other stories from CBC Manitoba News. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a Canadian free speech advocate has criticized a Winnipeg proposal to ban protests in certain places. Winnipeg city councillors have ordered staff to study the idea of putting buffer zones around vulnerable buildings like schools and community centres. So-called nuisance protests would not be allowed within 100 meters. We're going to hear from the BC Civil Liberties Association coming up. Some of the 4,000 modular homes the federal government plans to build will go along Keniston Boulevard in Winnipeg. A portion of the Nawe-Udina site was chosen by the newly created Build Canada Homes Agency. Shauna McKinnon at the Right to Housing Coalition says it's important the federal housing units are built in places close to services. More Manitoba News coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
We also have a mayor on later. I mentioned that off the top of the show. So we'll ask him more about if he can give us any more information or if he has any more information about where the other modular housing sites are going to be. Okay, let's get into the weather forecast with Mr. Avi Adiyemi. Good morning, Avi.
Hi, Marcy. We're looking at cloudy conditions. Some areas still seeing fog this morning, and drizzle will be present in the south. But the north, we're enjoying more like a sunny breaks here and there. Down south, Winnipeg, we are at 14 at this time. Mostly cloudy outside through the day. That's what we will see. Clouds would linger. This morning, we have a slim chance of drizzle coming our way. And then by the afternoon period, there's a good chance of showers developing. I'm talking about a 60, 65, 70% chance of showers coming our way later in the afternoon. And temperatures will reach around 17 degrees. Tonight, the sky stays mostly cloudy, and those showers would still hang back. Across the south, we're seeing temperatures hover between 12 and 14 degrees. Also mostly cloudy, light drizzle coming to most of the regions down south, while the north will stay mostly cooler with fog in some places and temperatures between 6 and 12. Winnipeg right now 14 this morning, heading to a mild and cloudy day, a high of just 17 degrees.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thanks, Mercy.
Corey Funk, how you doing this morning?
Doing all right, doing okay.
Good.
It was actually a nice, like, kind of almost warmish bike ride in. Not too bad.
Nice. I always forget that you're biking. You do that almost year round, right?
Yeah, I bike in the summer, run in the winter.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When do you make the switch? What's your cutoff?
Usually when it gets like sloppy, gross outside. When it snows. As soon as it's kind of first proper snow, that's when I put on the shoes and start going because I don't want to mess up my bike.
So how was your bike in?
It was lovely. It was great. I haven't run into any issues, and I haven't heard of any other issues on the road so far from people walking, biking, driving, any of those things. But if you do see something though, would love to hear from you. That number 204-788-3093.
A Winnipegger, as I mentioned, will be taking the international bowling stage this winter. Marissa Naylor has already represented Team Canada at the International Bowling Federation World Championship. But she's looking to build on the team's podium finishes from 2023 World Championships in Kuwait City. In just over 2 months, she's going to have the opportunity to do just that in Hong Kong, China. She is quite a talent, as I mentioned. She's been named Female Bowler of the Year by Manitoba 10-Pin Federation for 6 years in a row, up to 2024. And she's in studio this morning early. Hi there.
Good morning.
So what made you fall in love with 10-pin bowling?
My parents bowled when I was a young kid, so So at the age of 5 years old, they bowl on a Friday night league, and my brother and I were always at the lanes, and we were like, okay, we just want to obviously go hang out. And every time they were bowling on Friday night, we were there at 9 o'clock watching them bowl, and we were just kind of sucked into the sport since that day. I started bowling at 5 years old. My brother is similar age, and yeah, we've just loved it ever since.
Where was it? Was that here in
Chateau
Manitoba?
Lanes, so right off of Nairn, actually. Yeah, so that's where my parents bowled, and then we started bowling at what's now called Bowl Below on Mountain, so in the north end there. And yeah, we started bowling at a young age. I made my first nationals at 8 years old, so bowling has always been a part of my life.
When did they know that you were going to be a great bowler? When did you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think I ever knew, to be honest, at a young age. But when I made my first nationals, 8 years old, my first coach, who really doesn't take anyone under her wing until they are ready, she grabbed me pretty early and was like, okay, we know you have a talent, let's use it. So I think I knew at 8 years old that this was a sport that I wanted to pursue in the future, but I didn't really know what that caliber was until I made that nationals, and then I made a couple more, and then I was like, okay, and now I'm meeting friends across the country. What's next? I was probably like 13 years old. So
it's so cool. Prodigy, then, really.
Yeah.
I mean, at 8 years old when you're doing that, that's
Thank
the word
you.
to use. What are the myths about bowling that you want to bust this morning?
I mean, I would say the biggest thing is that bowling's for everyone, and that as much as it's a recreational sport like any other sport out there, I think that bowling is one of those things that we all can do, and that at a world level, especially in Hong Kong where we're going, it is a well-respected sport. It's well-respected in Canada. I think a lot of my colleagues who bowl, who pick it up over time, and the business community will sometimes go out to the lanes and they realize just how much of a, really of a community it is, but also how much of a sport it is too, and that what you really can accomplish in bowling, just like any other sport as well.
You and I were talking in the green room before you came in, and I was mentioning I have cousins in Saskatchewan who years ago were professional bowlers, and you said 5 pin or 10 pin, and I said 5. I don't think a lot of people, including myself, would realize that 5 pin in Canada has a totally different sort of presence than 10 pin, what you do, right?
Yeah, so 10 pin is really a I shouldn't say Canada-wide, but worldwide sport, whereas Canada only is 5 pin. And so, which is no disrespect at all to 5 pin. It's an equally amazing sport.
It's different though.
It's very different, yeah. So I always say 5 pin small balls, 10 pin big balls, because everyone kind of gets that misconception or understands it that way, I should say. And so, yeah, for 10 pin being a worldwide sport, as soon as you cross the border into the States, it is totally different. And as soon as we go to Hong Kong and in Asia, or when we went to Kuwait, you're bowling in stadiums that really are like Canada Life Center. Like it's pretty impeccable what we get to go to and what we get to see, and that it's a totally different level out there.
I was going to ask you about what crowds you're preparing for when you're going to be in Hong Kong.
Yeah, I mean, in Kuwait, we didn't really have much of a crowd because I think it was just the nature of that championships. But I think with Hong Kong, it'll be very different. We're expecting countries from Sweden to Norway to Finland. Obviously, Malaysia is a really popular one, Korea, Singapore, and then the States, of course. So
are you mentoring any young bowlers, or do you get people that you're inspiring that you hear from young bowlers across this country?
I actually I was the mentor coach last year at the Canadian Youth Championships with Team Manitoba. So I've been giving back through coaching in the last few years and really stepped up, I think, the last year and a bit, because I realized that I have time for it a little bit to do that. When I was actually in bowling and I had my last year of youth league in 2020 before everything shut down, I had a lot of questions from youth if I'm going to be coaching or not. And I think as a female also in this sport, it's really important for us to give back, because that's what the children look up to when they're looking for that next step of who can actually go pursue world bowling. Can women actually do this? Especially being in small Manitoba. I know we have a very big province and a lot going on, but we're also just small Winnipeg in the big scheme of things too. And so when someone sees that, it's pretty big.
How does a bowler make Team Canada in your sport? Like, how many levels do you have to go through?
Totally, yeah. So we have a Team Canada trials every January, and at that team trials, you have to place in the top 6, and from there you have to earn your spot. And then once you're on the team for the whole year. They go through a selection process for a World Championships, or if it's not a World's year, it's a Pan Am year, what we call our PAPCON. And so you have to go through that selection process, and if you get selected, you go, and if you don't, you're still a part of Team Canada for the year. You're just more learning from the back end of just how to be a better bowler, but really don't necessarily get to travel. So I've been fortunate to travel the last few years.
How's your training been going for this?
Really good, yeah. So actually tomorrow hits the 2-month mark until we leave. So I think I'm actually going down to the States Saturday morning and going to compete in a tournament and just, gonna start getting ready from the tournament side because the summer was pretty slow. There wasn't too many tournaments, a lot of like off-lane practice, a lot of on-lane stuff too, just preparing for that. But I think overall it's going really well.
What's it like for you to represent your country? What do you love about that aspect of things? You're wearing your jacket too this morning. If people are watching on YouTube, see the Team Canada jacket.
Yeah, honestly, it's a true honor. And it's something that I was saying to one of the reporters yesterday. You never take it for granted because it's one of those things where you never really know how long you're going to be able to do it. And also just what that means to, again, the younger population of bowlers in our province and across our country. Again, being a woman and representing my country is something that is more than just representing your country. It's more just showing that next generation what is possible. And I think when we won 2 medals, or 3 medals, I should say, in Kuwait, when we came back, it really showed the next generation that anyone can do this. And so for me, it's just an honor and a privilege and nothing that you ever want to take for granted, and that you just utilize the opportunity as much as you have it, because you can do a lot with a sport, let alone travel the world.
What's been your best moment on the lanes as a bowler? I mean, my gosh, you got to go back to when you were 8, so that's maybe a mean question because you're like, that's a lot of, bowling.
I would actually say it happened last year out of my whole career. So last year we have a city championships called the Marinelli. It's a 65-year history, and women have only been able to bowl it for the last 25 years just because, I mean, that's just how sport is sometimes.
We were excluded.
We were excluded from bowling in the tournament, and so that's our city championships.
That's how sport was, by the way.
Yeah.
It's not how sport's going to be in the future, and just speaking to all those young women out there.
Yeah, and so in that 65-year history in the tournament, but 25 years specifically with women, I was the first woman to win that tournament ever in history.
Yeah, you were.
So I think that that was one thing that I didn't realize it was a big highlight, but thinking more about it and just coming to terms with it, that was one thing that really just hit a lot different than really any world medal could. But from the world stage, it would be my top moment of 2023 in trios in Kuwait, winning bronze with my teammates. And then we also had the other women's team, because there's 2 women's teams, because we're split up into group of 6 and then a group of 3, and they won silver, we won bronze. So I think those are 2 moments that stand out in all of that.
I love that you picked that. How proud were the women in your life for you about that, and maybe even the women in your life of the older generations that maybe wouldn't have had that opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, one of the best bowlers I think in our province, Lynn Gauthier, she actually was in the tournament, and she was the first person to text me after I won the city championships, and she was like, if I wasn't going to win it, I wanted it to be you. And she is an amazing bowler. She's been on she's actually going to Reno herself for Team Canada for the Masters in October. And so, yeah, just receiving that support from any women, even in, I would say, bowling, but across all sports and even into the business community, is just super special, because it's not something you see in a lot of places. In the support of Winnipeg, I think it just speaks to the Winnipeg culture that we have here.
Thank you so much for coming in early. Good luck when you make your way in November to your next big challenge, and good luck as well with your training.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That is Marissa Naylor in studio with us. She'll represent Team Canada at the International Bowling Federation World Championship. It's happening in Hong Kong. The competition is November 24th. It goes through December 5th.
They're selling makeup geared to the male consumer, and also telling them to slip into intimate undies. It's not just the fellas they're targeting either. Advertisers are also decanting the delights of Scotch to women. Marketers discover the value of gender-bending brands on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly. Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland. And on demand on CBC Listen. It's Canada's most prestigious competition for new short fiction. The 2026 CBC Short Story Prize is on. Send in your best original unpublished short fiction. Up for grabs, cash prizes from the Canada Council for the Arts, a 2-week writing residency at the Banff Centre for Arts and Creativity, and your work published on CBC Books. Contest closes November 1st. For rules and more, go to cbcbooks.ca.
6:24 a.m. is the time right now, and you're with CBC this morning. It is mostly cloudy this morning in Winnipeg. Our high is, our temperature now is 14. Our high is not much different, 17 degrees is where we are headed. Well, next on the show, let's turn our attention to what's happening internationally. In the wake of the UN Commission's finding that genocide is happening in Gaza, the Israeli military pushes on. The ground incursion into Gaza City is well underway now. More than 1 million people have been living there, and now they've been told to leave. To help us understand what is happening in Gaza City, we have Mariam Barghouti with us. She's a writer and journalist. She's based in Ramallah, that's in the occupied West Bank, and that is actually where we have reached her right now. Hello.
Hi.
Tell me what you're hearing about what the Israeli military is doing in Gaza City, given your perspective on the ground.
Yes, Marcy. So what we're seeing is an escalation of Israel's attacks on Palestinians, especially in an ongoing ground invasion on Gaza City, that is in the center of Gaza, where more than 700,000 Palestinians were there. So what we're seeing is an escalation of bombardment, but also live bullets and shelling. At least 99 Palestinians were killed yesterday and 81 the day before that. Now, the numbers are expected to be much higher, but this is the confirmed number of bodies that have reached medical facilities, or what remains of them, in Gaza. So we're seeing a severe intensification amid a telecommunications blackout and a media blackout as well.
Israel says that they're warning people about the incursion by dropping these leaflets, we understand. What can you tell us about the actual options that civilians even have to find a safe place?
That is an excellent question. So Israel is claiming to be dropping leaflets, to inform Palestinians to evacuate, but reality says that there's nowhere to go. Gaza, the strip is 365 kilometers square. That is the size of Montreal, a place that has been heavily bombarded with bombs for 22 months, that there is no civilian infrastructure left. There's no buildings left, that we can hear the bombs from the West Bank, from Ramallah, and at times in Tel Aviv, they can be heard as well. So there's nowhere to go. And you need to recognize that these Palestinians, nearly 2 million Palestinians, have been systemically starved for months. So even if people want to move, they are unable, quite literally, because of the fatigue they're facing and the blindness that has resulted from this malnutrition. Reminding that the majority of Gaza's population are children and youth as well. So it's a very vulnerable population with truly nowhere to go.
Many journalists also have been killed in Gaza as well in the last 2 years, if we look at sort of the trajectory of this. What are your concerns about understanding what is truly unfolding now in Gaza and getting that information out journalistically?
Yes, that is important because Israel has systemically killed journalists. More than 250 of my peers have been killed in the last 22 months. And just before the ground invasion in August, Israel made the intention to target the main reporters, people like Anas al-Sharif and the Al Jazeera crew. And what I'm hearing from civilians as well as journalist peers in Gaza is that this is unprecedented bombing by Israel and an unprecedented attack. So we are unable to have journalists report on it at this point. And yet it is the most escalated version of Israel's attack on Palestinians in Gaza.
What can you tell us about the concerns of the Israeli public to this incursion? How do the hostages fit into this?
Right. So, I mean, the Israeli public only feels emboldened in light of international condemnation. The UN genocide report came out outlining things like soldiers were shooting toddlers in the head. And yet the Israeli public's protests are directed towards Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the current government, in that they don't care about the hostages' lives. So it's not just that Israel is committing crimes against humanity, it is about the hostages, reminding that Israeli airstrikes and ground invasion also does place the hostages at risk, where Israel had killed at least 22 Israeli hostages earlier in the war through airstrikes, and then executed 3 more by thinking they're Palestinians. But the Israeli public's response shows and emphasizes this duality of care. So it's not just because there's crimes against humanity being committed, it is because the hostages are at risk.
And we're hearing a bit of this on World Report, but how is Israel reacting to some of the international condemnation now it's receiving?
It's emboldened. It does not care about the international community's response, reminding that today, September 18th, marks the day that Israel should have been disengaged from the West Bank and Gaza, according to the UN decision made of September 18th last year. Now, what we saw instead is in Gaza, now we're seeing unprecedented attacks. And in the West Bank, we're seeing more and more attacks by armed Israeli militia groups. So it really shows a rogue behavior and disregard for the international community or basic moral courtesy.
Thank you for being with us this morning, Miriam. That stat of your 250 journalistic colleagues being killed will stay with me for the day, I think. Appreciate your time. That is Miriam Barghouti, writer and journalist. She joined us from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank this morning. Coming up, turning our attention to something completely different. As you've been hearing on World Report, ABC has suspended Jimmy Kimmel's late night show indefinitely. We have details coming up in our business news. That's after your CBC Winnipeg news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. So this is what normal feels like. A high of 17 in Winnipeg today. That is seasonal for this time of year. Cloudy with a good chance of late afternoon showers. A woman is in hospital with serious injuries after being hit by the driver of a vehicle outside a Sikh temple. It happened Monday night as she was trying to cross King Edward Street. The Gurdwara there serves a growing population in northwest Winnipeg. Many people walk or bike to worship and have to cross that busy road. Harpal Kaur Sidhu lives nearby and says the collision highlights the need for safety improvements.
She was hit hard and she rolled over the road. And she was still, and I was scared that maybe she's okay or not, but it was a terrible accident.
The city of Winnipeg says it has identified the need to upgrade the road and add sidewalks, walk and bike paths and pedestrian crossings. But there's no money set aside for the project, and the city says it isn't slated to happen until at least 2030. The site of the former Kapyong Barracks in Winnipeg has been selected as one location for thousands of affordable housing units the federal government plans to build across Canada. The site, now known as Nawe Odina, will get some of the 4,000 modular units. Prime Minister Mark Carney announced Winnipeg is among 6 cities chosen by the Build Canada Homes Agency. Shauna McKinnon at the Right to Housing Coalition says the city needs houses everywhere.
The main issue for us is we want to make sure that, there's a significant number of units that are allocated for low-income households, and that there be ongoing operating funds to support that housing over the long term.
The federal government owns about a third of the Nawe Odena site. The rest is owned by a coalition of 7 Manitoba First Nations. A Canadian free speech advocate has criticized a City of Winnipeg proposal to ban protests in certain places. Winnipeg City councillors ordered staff to study the idea of putting buffer zones around vulnerable buildings like schools and community centres. So-called nuisance protests would not be allowed within 100 metres. Vibert Jack is the litigation director at the BC Civil Liberties Association.
Yes, they can be a nuisance. That's part of the form of protest. It's how you get attention to your cause and get your point across. And the right to free expression, the right to assembly, they protect the content of your speech, but also the form. And that's what's being attacked here, I think.
The city's Executive Policy Committee passed a motion directing staff to come back with a draft bylaw in 3 months. Well, as we've been hearing, talk show host Jimmy Kimmel is off the air. The American network ABC has pulled his show indefinitely. The move came after the owners of some ABC stations said they would stop carrying the show because of comments Kimmel made Monday night about the murder of Charlie Kirk and Trump supporters.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
The chair of the U.S. Federal Communications Commission said he would look at ABC's broadcast license over the comments. Ali Carbone is an entertainment reporter based in New York.
I think we've entered really dangerous territory here. I think it was a fear back in July when Colbert was canceled.
We've lost Heather for the moment.
And
There
sorry
she
about
is.
that.
That's okay.
Yeah, I will tell you that President Trump celebrated ABC's move on his Truth Social platform, saying congratulations to ABC for finally having the courage to do what had to be done. You can hear the latest national and international news on World Report at 7. Natural gas distribution charges are going up over the next 3 years in Manitoba. The province's utility regulator has ordered annual increases of 4.5, 4.5, and 4% on the cost of delivering natural gas. Centra Gas, a subsidiary of Manitoba Hydro, only asked for a single rate hike, but the Public Utilities Board went even further. It says Centra Gas doesn't have enough revenue to stay afloat otherwise. The rate hikes on distribution charges do not affect the cost of natural gas itself. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather.
Welcome.
All right, 6:35 a.m. It is Thursday. It is September 18th, and we are in the last full week of summer, my friends, before officially we turn to fall. Let's find out what the regional forecast looks like. Abby Adiyemi's popped into the studio. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning once again, Marcy. We're looking at the skies leaning mostly cloudy across the regions this morning. Some foggy conditions and some drizzle in some spots down south. The northern areas will definitely brighten up. We're going to see that transition to a mix of sun and clouds up north, but overall it will feel mild with damp conditions in the southern parts of the province. Winnipeg right now 14 degrees still, mostly cloudy outside. There's a slim chance of drizzle this morning with a good chance of showers later in the day. We'll see temperatures climb to around 17 degrees, and that light winds will just make things calm, not as warm as 3 days ago. Down in Modern Winter, Altoona Morris down to the US border, we're seeing temperatures hover around 14 and 13 also. There, cloudy conditions. The day is going to be bringing more like a light drizzle that way, and a good chance of showers also coming towards that region. Temperatures warming to 16 degrees with calm north breeze. Brandon and the Westman region, 12 at this time. Misty conditions in that part of the province. That should clear as the day goes on, but the skies will remain cloudy with a good chance of showers later in the day, warming up to 14 degrees. Cloudy over in the Parkland region. That covers Dauphin all the way down to Roblin, and we saw light rain earlier, but now it's mostly cloudy there, 12 degrees. Cloudy skies will hold through the day with drizzles at some time, and this fog patches you notice in some areas will clear in the morning. You warm up to 16 degrees. For Gimli, 13 at this time, mostly cloudy. Most regions in the Interlake region will see this slim chance of a morning drizzle also, with the skies will be staying mostly cloudy, and temperatures would warm up near 17 degrees. Now with track conditions gradually into the northern part of the province, we're starting from the Power Flim. We're looking at about 12 degrees in that region. Cloudy conditions also. We spotted fog earlier. That should leave and give way to a mix of sun and clouds. Later in the day, warming up to 17. Thompson, cloudy at 7 degrees this morning. Also spotting some foggy conditions in that region. That should clear near the noon period, and then we're going to see a mix of sun and clouds, high around 17. Further north, we're tracking 8 degrees in Churchill, mostly cloudy here. There's a slim chance of drizzle this morning and foggy conditions in that part of the province. That should lift as you get into the day. Temperature will only get to 12 degrees with some breezy conditions from the southeast. So overall, Marcy, it's just going to be like a cloudy start with foggy conditions spotted here and there, and you might spot some drizzle also on you. And temperatures will be getting to around 17 degrees in most of the regions.
Okay. Abby and Corey are both in studio now. Stick around, Abby. I got to ask you something after Corey's done traffic.
It has been a very quiet commute. Haven't heard of any major issues. But if you do see something, 204-788-3093.
So do either of you get freaked out by like creepy crawlies or spiders?
Yes, a little bit. A little bit.
Okay, me too.
There's some weird kind of beetles I see, and I'm always scared that it might bite. But I know beetles don't bite, right? But they just look like scary.
Okay, beetles aside, let's talk spiders, and I'll tell you why. Ooh. So on Facebook, I posted because I was sitting in my house and I had the blind down. It's like one of those sheer blinds, and all of a sudden I saw this shadow of this spider. It was outside, but it was like moving down on the outside of the window. And so obviously the blind kind of magnified it. It made it look like it was huge. But pulled the blind down, looked out there, big, beautiful web. And it actually was quite large, probably the size of maybe a quarter of the body. But I asked people, because of the size of this thing, and I got a really great picture, to post their spiders.
Oh.
Because they're all over the place right now. And you should see the photos on my Facebook page. If you're into this, you got to go there and you got to check it out. People are naming their spiders, you guys. So Chrissy Cook's got this spider, and this is crazy. The thing is like bigger than a toonie, and he's an orb weaver, I think they're called. Most of the ones are orb weavers. That's what mine was. It says it's stuffed up into the rafters. It looks outside in her house. I was like, other people are going, cute. They love them. But Chrissy says his name's Ferdinand. She's named him. He lives above my front door, and yeah, his diameter is bigger than a toonie. Mandy Dissereau Grayston wrote into us, we have tons of these spiders, and there's a photo of hers climbing down after an egg sac exploded with hundreds of babies.
Yeah, that happened to me when I was a kid. I saw that. I was like a dumb kid. I stepped on a spider, and then all of a sudden the spiders.
Oh, yeah, there's going to be a lot of babies in there.
Someone's having breakfast and really mad at us right now, by the
sorry.
way. Mandy named hers Joy. I just like the people are naming them. And there's an amazing photo that Joanne posted on our site. No last name, I apologize, but of a crab spider on her milkweed. So milkweed's like this pink color. It's a flower. And the crab spider is like white. So it's really, really interesting, these photos of everyone's spiders.
In the arachnid family, the one I really love, I like it, but it's scary. It's the black widow. It looks beautiful, but deadly.
I don't know what we have in Manitoba for black widows. I don't know all my spiders enough to know what varieties. I don't believe we have that here in Manitoba, but
Those they travel far.
well, we're going to look that up. I don't believe we've got that here.
But it's a beautiful spider, but it's dangerous.
I'm a big daddy long legs guy.
Don't want it near you. Oh yeah, see those are
funny.
Those are the ones most of us can handle.
Yeah.
These orb spiders are surprising quite a few Manitobans. I think that's why there's so many pictures of them coming up in our thread. If you want to post your spider, and I also, by the way, noticed yesterday on one of the naturalist threads here, I think it was a birding group locally, also people were posting spiders. So you probably have some great pics, and we'd love to see them. The webs can be quite beautiful too. You can go to our Marcy Marcusa page on Facebook, which acts as a show page during the show. Right now, let's continue with the show. 6:41 a.m. and Hallie Cottenham joins us with business news and stories. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So as we've been hearing on World Report and everyone talking about it from when it broke last night, ABC has suspended Jimmy Kimmel's late night show now indefinitely. What are the details? Heather mentioned some of this, but what do you have to say about this?
Yeah, I'm picking up on what Heather was talking about in your local news. It's over comments that Kimmel made about the killing of Charlie Kirk. On his Monday night monologue, Kimmel said the MAGA gang was trying to score political points off Kirk's killing. Of Trump, Kimmel said, this is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he calls a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish. And then on Tuesday's show, Kimmel said Trump was fanning the flames by attacking people on the left. So yesterday, the Trump-appointed chair of the FCC was a guest on a conservative podcast. Brendan Carr urged ABC and its parent company, Disney, to take action against Kimmel.
They have a license granted by us at the FCC, and that comes with it an obligation to operate in the public interest. Look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct, to take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead.
Then following those comments, Nexstar Media Group said it would stop airing Kimmel on its dozens of ABC affiliates. And just a little context for you, Marcy, Nexstar is in the middle of seeking FCC approval for a $6 billion takeover of Arrival. That's sort of besides the point, but it gives you a little bit of context there. And the FCC thanked Nexstar for, quote, doing the right thing. Within a few hours of that interview and those comments being released, ABC had pulled the plug on Kimmel. You're hearing President Trump's response to that. He posted great news for America and then seemed to encourage NBC to cancel other late night shows hosted by Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers. Lots of folks comparing all of this to the cancellation of the CBS late night host Stephen Colbert. Now, this morning, reaction to Kimmel's cancellation pouring in. Some say Trump's critics are being systematically silenced. Last night, California Governor Gavin Newsom said the Republican Party doesn't believe in free speech. He said, quote, they are censoring you in real time. Democrat Chuck Schumer said everybody across the political spectrum should be speaking out to stop what's happening to Jimmy Kimmel. And just as sort of another bit of breaking news this morning, Marcy, The Guardian is reporting that the Australian Broadcasting Corporation has been barred from attending Trump's UK news conference near London today. This over a clash between a senior reporter and editor and the president back in Washington, where Trump was asked about his ongoing business dealings while sitting as president. So these stories are piling up.
It's interesting because one of the analysts I saw on one of the cable networks out of the States last night was talking about, someone said this has not happened before, and in this context, it certainly hasn't. However, if they were going back to the 1960s, suggesting the Smothers Brothers at one point were pulled off a network for something they were saying, but it's not directly comparable. We'll have to see what happens next. Let's go to another story. Some strong, even emotional words about the tariff dispute between Canada and the U.S.
Yeah, Canada's Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne says it's sad that the U.S. has turned its back on Canada by starting a trade war, one that's now forcing us to reinvent the national economy. He was speaking with reporters after a caucus meeting yesterday. But his words follow comments from the U.S. ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoekstra, who earlier this week complained about that elbows-up tone of the federal election and beyond.
And much of that messaging is continuing of, we got to be tough against the Americans. We're not going to buy F-35s. We're going to ban your alcohol. We're going to tell our people not to travel to the United States. We don't want your data. We don't want your information technology and all of those types of things. I'm sorry, but that's what we see. That doesn't tell me that Canada is passionate about this relationship in the same way that we are.
That's the U.S. ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoekstra. Meanwhile, Marcy, a bipartisan group of U.S. senators moved to block those tariffs. They're questioning Trump's use of the International Economic Emergency Powers Act that uses allegations of fentanyl trafficking to hit us with tariffs when U.S. border statistics, as we know, show that only the tiniest fraction of it is coming from Canada.
And closer to home, new rules on who can win Canada's top film and television awards.
Yeah, only Canadian citizens and permanent residents will be eligible to win a Canadian Screen Award. This move by the Academy of Canadian Cinema and TV follows something that happened earlier this year. You may recall Australia's Cate Blanchett won for Best Lead in a Comedy, albeit for Winnipeg director Guy Maddin's film Rumours. Sebastian Stan and Jeremy Strong are both American, but they won Best Lead and Supporting Performers in a Drama for the Canadian co-production The Apprentice. The Academy apparently got a lot of feedback after these folks won the hardware, and the main message of that feedback was, look, this is a Canadian awards show. It's for Canadians, so let's make a change. Of course, the Screen Awards are the Canadian equivalent, the Oscars or the Emmys.
All right. Thank you very much, Hallie.
Thanks, Marcy.
Hallie Cotnam with our business news. Now, speaking of Oscars and speaking of stardom, this week a lot of people are paying tribute to Robert Redford. He died at the age of 89. He was an actor, director, and activist, but in his prime, he was also considered a sex symbol. And that got CBC's Karsten Knox wondering if that kind of label is still relevant or appropriate in 2025. He asked people on the streets of Halifax whether they could identify sex symbols like Robert Redford today.
Ryan Reynolds.
So what's the appeal of Ryan Reynolds?
He's good looking and I like watching him.
Keanu Reeves is the one that comes to mind. Every movie he does makes you think.
But he has an appeal.
He does, yes, for some reason. And I wish I knew what it was, because I would copy it.
He seems to age very gracefully, too, isn't he?
That must be part of it, like a vampire.
No, I can't think of anyone that would have that charisma and that longevity of a career nowadays, because they're so hit and miss.
Do you think it's an old-fashioned idea, the sex symbol?
Probably not. I think we're probably just the same, but we're over in 2 minutes. There's someone else that pops along. Yeah, because of social media, I think we have short attention spans now. So something is there, feature of the day, and then next week it's someone else we've moved on to, and they just don't have that longevity, I think. Maybe like a Tom Hardy, but even then, he doesn't have the longevity. I don't know if we'll be talking about him in 20 years' time. He's had a good career so far. Brad Pitt's not perfect. George Clooney's kind of nice to... Maybe a George Clooney, because then he has an opinion about things politically. He's not afraid to say things.
Personally, I would gravitate more towards character, being, values, persona, who you are as a person. I mean, would I run and jump at the opportunity to see someone because they're gorgeous? For example, in an actor, I wouldn't reduce what I would look for in going to see a film or an actor to a quote-unquote sex symbol.
For sort of the younger generation, it's a lot more focused on I guess politics is a sort of big thing that people will pay attention to with celebrities and public figures and stuff more than heartthrob figures.
Leonardo DiCaprio, who's a climate activist and who's just such a fantastic actor.
I saw him interviewed just yesterday saying how much he admired Robert Redford for those very reasons.
Very cool. Yeah. So, yeah, Leonardo DiCaprio.
I'm a big fan of like more like weird actors. I like Willem Dafoe. Willem Dafoe's great.
Willem Dafoe is great.
Yeah, he's the best. But he's like an old man, so I mean it's a bit different of a situation. But
I feel like the Wick though. He's a pretty good looking old man.
CBC's Karsten Knox talking to people in Halifax actually about today's quote-unquote sex symbols, but it's come to mean, it sounds like, something different in 2025. And we were wondering whether or not there's a double standard now, right? Like, could you actually go out and hit the streets and talk about if a female actor died, if a woman died, and you were asking about sex symbols? But it is a term that's been thrown around and used for years. So call us. What are your thoughts on this? And who today is, top of mind for you? And maybe it is, as those folks were saying, someone you admire for other reasons. 788-3205.
Western Canada's best up-and-coming hip-hop, country, rock artists, and more are coming to Winnipeg. Winnipeg welcomes Breakout West September 24th to 28th, a 4-day music conference and 3-day music festival, including the Western Canadian Music Awards, and CBC is a proud sponsor. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for more.
10-7 right now, mostly cloudy, 14 in Winnipeg, misty in Brandon and 12 in Thompson's cloudy and 7 degrees. Well, next on the show, let's talk about imports and exports in CUSMA. About 75% of Manitoba's imports came from the U.S. as of 2025, or come from, rather. That's according to the Bureau of Statistics. Overall, Canadian domestic exports to the states totaled $547 billion in 2024. For our province, we exported $14.5 billion worth of goods to the states. That represents, in case you're curious, 70% of total domestic exports. And that comes from a provincial website with data on it for where we live. Now, we're talking about all these stats because Prime Minister Mark Carney is headed south today. He's in Mexico City. He will meet with Mexico's President, Claudia Sheinbaum, to talk trade and investment. Both countries have faced tariffs and threats of tariffs from the United States and the President Donald Trump since his re-election. Carney's trip also comes as the U.S. begins the formal process, you might know, of reviewing the Canada-U.S.-Mexico agreement, or, as I said, CUSMA, as it's known. Now, this is the trade deal that replaced NAFTA in 2020. And to talk more about today's talks with the Prime Minister, Laura McDonald's with us. She's a professor of political science at Carleton University. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So how would you describe the current state of Canada's relationship with Mexico, first of all?
Well, I think it's been a little bit rocky over the last year or so. Canada decided to reimpose a visa requirement on Mexicans to come to Canada, which was not popular in Mexico. The Canadian ambassador said some critical public remarks about the judicial reform process that Mexico had decided to adopt, which Canadian companies weren't very happy about, and that really got up the backs of the Mexican government, which really resists fundamentally foreign intervention in Mexican domestic politics. And then there were some very colorful comments made by people like Doug Ford and Danielle Smith about how they didn't think that Canada should go ahead with a deal with Mexico and that we should basically throw Mexico under the bus when approaching the relationship with the United States, so that we should just have a bilateral deal with the United States and get rid of Mexico. And this was widely reported in Mexico and I would say deeply offensive to Mexicans who expected a friendlier, more supportive response to Mexico from Canada than from the United States. So I think there's some work to be done to kind of repair this relationship and move forward.
If that's one of Mark Carney's goals, to repair and move forward, what is actually expected to be on the table with discussion as he meets with Claudia Sheinbaum, Mexico's president?
So there will be issues related to trade diversification. Both countries are trying to diversify their markets away from the U.S. market, on which we both become excessively reliant. So looking for new trade partners, where better to look than Mexico, which we do have a trade deal with, and it is not that far away compared to far-flung countries like China or Japan. So they're going to be looking for specific economic sectors and areas of investment where we can develop that mutual relationship, and then thinking about how to jointly tackle the elephant in the room, the elephant between us, which is the Trump administration in the United States, and what kind of joint strategies can we develop to disarm a little bit the Trump offensive.
This week, obviously, the U.S. announced the first step in renegotiating, speaking of the states, the CUSMA agreement, or what they call the USMCA. What does the timing of the review mean for Carney's discussions with the Mexican president?
Yes, the review or renegotiation, as Trump likes to talk about it, as certainly going to be top of mind for both leaders. Consultations are occurring in Mexico as well, with stakeholders in Mexico about what they'd like to see, and Canada's engaged in consultations as well. So this is really top of mind. And I think it's important for Canada and Mexico to really decide to work together and not to go around each other's back to get a better deal from the United States. Time has shown we are not going to get a better deal on our own. Other countries are doing these one-on-one deals, which don't amount to very much if you actually look at them. And that do involve U.S. tariffs. So both Canada and Mexico agree that we, at least the governments believe that we're better off with the existing agreement, not reopening a lot of chapters to fundamental renegotiation, maybe tweaking some details. That's what they're going to try to achieve, but I'm not sure that's very realistic in the face of Trump's desire to rip up everything and rewrite everything. So they're going to have to develop sort of a plan B if Trump sort of digs in his heels. And so I imagine that they're going to go specifically over some of the contents of the agreement and try to find areas where they could compromise, or perhaps stake out some new areas that Canada and Mexico would like to see in this agreement, which certainly could be improved.
Thank you very much, Laura, for teeing up what we might be hearing today. Appreciate it.
Great to talk to you. Thank you.
It is Laura McDonald with us live on CBC. She's a professor of political science at Carleton University. We reached her in Ottawa. We're going to hear more from the Prime Minister on his trip to Mexico coming up on World Report. That's your national and international news here on CBC, and it is 3 minutes to 7 o'clock, and that is when we will hear more on that story. Right now, let's hear more on local stories. Heather Wells joins us with headlines.
Well, some of the 4,000 modular homes the federal government plans to build will go along Keniston Boulevard in Winnipeg. A portion of the Nawe Udina site was chosen by the newly created agency Build Canada Homes. Shauna McKinnon at the Right to Housing Coalition says it is important the federal housing units are built in places close to services. A Manitoba man who was prescribed medication to treat his arthritis claims he suffered blood clots and other side effects from the drug. He is now suing the pharmaceutical company AbbVie that makes the medication called Rinvoq. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 7:30.
Thanks, Heather.
Thanks.
In the forecast, as I've been mentioning, in Winnipeg, we're mostly cloudy, 14 degrees. We'll only get to 17. 30% chance of morning drizzle. Now, we're going to all get a little bit of wet. Tonight, 60% chance of showers. Tomorrow, expecting rain. Saturday, periods of rain as well. So that's the next few days in Winnipeg, and Brandon has a very similar forecast. You actually might get you have a better chance of getting that drizzle and showers today. 60% chance for you over in Brandon. Just cloudy up north in Thompson, by the way, and a mix of sun and cloud right around noontime. Watch for the fog out there. It's that time of year, too. Speaking of which, if you see any problems with the fog on your commute or anything else, please give us a call. Corey, that is. He'll pick up the commuter line at CBC 788-3093. Well, from newly proposed encampment rules and certain areas in the city being off limits to protests, there's been a lot of news developing out of City Hall. Winnipeg Mayor Scott Gillingham will join us for our monthly interview, so stay tuned for that. Also, In the next hour of the show, we're going to visit an inner city school in Winnipeg where kids have just received a pile of books as part of a program that aims to share the magic of reading. And right after World Report, you might have been hearing this a bit yesterday in the news. There's a new national report that is acknowledging the prevalence of anti-Indigenous racism in sport in Canada. We're going to hear from the founder of an Indigenous-led volleyball club who says it's time for non-Indigenous athletes and sports organizations to step up. Stay tuned. I'm Marcy Marcusa. World Report is next at 7.
Today on The Current.
Mostly I try to stay away from it, but there always is moments where you're reaching for it.
AI is being used in different ways in schools around the world. As part of our series Learning Curve, we'll talk about the promise and peril of AI in the classroom and how Canada can adapt its strategy and curriculum to meet the needs of kids and teachers coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. U.S. President Donald Trump is praising ABC's decision to suspend Jimmy Kimmel's late night show. The network says the talk show host is off the air indefinitely over comments he made about Charlie Kirk's death. Critics say the move is a threat to free speech. David Frum was a speechwriter for Republican President George W. Bush. He blames the Trump administration.
This is not cancel culture because it's not culture. It's state repression. It's an order from the government. Here's the script you must read. If you do not read it, you will be taken off the air. Jimmy Kimmel didn't read it. He was taken off the air.
Steve Futterman has more.
This is the comment on Monday night that led to Jimmy Kimmel's indefinite suspension.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from.
Kimmel never actually says that Charlie Kirk's killer is a member of the MAGA movement, but does suggest that MAGA members are trying to use Kirk's killing to help their cause. Just before last night's taping was to start, ABC said there would be no show. This fan was outside the studio.
It didn't happen this morning. It was like right before the taping started.
Trump was in the UK when the news broke. He celebrated on social media, saying Kimmel, who he has been feuding with for years, has zero talent. ABC's decision came after around 60 affiliates said they would stop carrying Kimmel's show indefinitely. Brendan Carr, the head of the Federal Communications Commission and a Trump ally, says late-night talk shows have changed.
They went from being court jesters that would make fun of everybody in power to being court clerics and enforcing a very narrow political ideology.
Democratic Senate Leader Chuck Schumer says the move sets a dangerous precedent.
Trump and his allies seem to want to shut down speech that they don't like to hear.
And last night on many ABC affiliates, instead of Jimmy Kimmel, the network ran an episode of Celebrity Family Feud. Steve Futterman, CBC News, Los Angeles.
Donald Trump says he plans to designate Antifa as a major terrorist organization. The term is shorthand for far-left anti-fascist militant groups. Antifa is more of a decentralized movement, not a single organization. The U.S. president called them a sick, dangerous, radical left disaster. Trump is currently on a state visit to the United Kingdom. After yesterday's pomp, today is politics. Bagpipes hail the arrival of the U.S. president at Chequers. The prime minister's country estate is the location of today's meeting with Keir Starmer. Trump is on the second and final day of his state visit to the UK. The two leaders are getting down to politics after yesterday's focus on British pageantry. Trade, along with the wars in Ukraine and Gaza, will be the focus of their talks. This hour, Prime Minister Mark Carney is departing for Mexico with two separate but related goals. The first is to find ways to work with President Claudia Sheinbaum to preserve the CUSMA free trade deal. The second is to develop a bilateral trading relationship with Mexico, one that operates independently of the White House. The trip is also expected to include talks on security issues such as transnational crime and drug smuggling. The deadline is fast approaching for Ottawa to release its review of the F-35 fighter jet purchase. It could be the ultimate boycott of U.S. goods if the government decides not to go ahead with the $27.7 billion purchase. But as Murray Brewster reports, the F-35 is not the only U.S.-made equipment the Canadian military has ordered.
The Prime Minister was very clear by the end of the summer, which is September 21st, he'll have a decision.
You have to have some sympathy for Defence Minister David McGuinty. Almost every time he sticks his head out in public, somebody asks when we'll see the review of the F-35 fighter jet purchase. In fairness, September 21st is Sunday, and the deadline is self-imposed.
There's no denying that there are some sensitivities.
Retired Vice Admiral Mark Norman says deciding to limit the fighter jet purchase risks angering the Americans. Deciding to go forward risks angering boycott-minded Canadians. But there's a bigger problem. The F-35 is the leading edge of a number of military kit purchases from the U.S. Rocket-propelled artillery, naval combat systems, light tactical army vehicles, all of it urgently needed by the Canadian forces.
Every one of those programs that you listed has huge vulnerabilities with respect to our continued dependence on not just U.S. supply chains, but on U.S. access.
Prime Minister Mark Carney promised Canada would buy less from the U.S. and more from other allies. Wendy Gilmore is a former Canadian NATO defense official.
They will be looking very clearly at what is needed and in the pipeline right now and should not be disturbed, and what are the new capabilities for which there isn't yet anything under contract.
Gilmore says there is room to explain the predicament to the public, but the government will have to be upfront. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Ottawa.
Israel's military says it has dismantled a weapons storage facility in Gaza City. It says the cache contained explosive devices intended to target IDF troops. The military operation in Gaza City has destroyed apartment blocks and displaced hundreds of thousands of people. Sasha Petrusek has more on the precarious humanitarian situation.
As thousands of Palestinians jam a seaside evacuation route out of Gaza City, Israeli troops advance toward its center with tanks and artillery. They are not far, say Gazans, though with Hamas fighters concentrated here, resistance is expected. Caught in the middle, mothers like Rawa Al-Kafarna, moving one more time, scared and skeptical. Each time they said it's a safe zone, she says, then they drop bombs on us.
People are quite terrified.
Olga Cherevko works with OCHA, the main UN agency coordinating aid. She says the declared famine in Gaza City is getting worse, access limited by Israel.
Many missions are being denied to the north to deliver aid. So this is, of course, adding to the scarcity and the shortages.
More than 500,000 Palestinians remain in the active combat zone. In Israel, opposition to the new offensive is mounting, with daily protests in front of the Prime Minister's residence. Protesters fear that the remaining 20 hostages, many in Gaza City, are at greater risk than ever. Protester Aviva Mimouni Bloch.
The war is not going anywhere. There are so many people that are losing their lives, children and people that are not involved. Our soldiers are going for a war that has no reason anymore.
Still, that war continues. Sasha Petrusek, CBC News, Jerusalem.
People in Afghanistan are losing access to Wi-Fi. The Taliban is banning fiber optic technology, and it leaves government offices, businesses, homes, and public institutions, including schools, without internet access. Officials say alternatives are being found for urgent necessities. The Taliban says the ban is designed to, quote, prevent immorality. A leading climate think tank says Canada's efforts to reduce carbon emissions have stalled. The government has put out an estimate of the country's 2024 emissions about 7 months before the government will release its own numbers. The result is it shows that Canada did not achieve an overall emissions reduction. As Anayat Singh reports, the data comes as Ottawa is rethinking many key climate policies.
Canada will not hit its 2030 target.
That stark warning about our carbon emissions goals comes from leading think tank, the Canadian Climate Institute, based on its early estimates of last year's emissions. Dave Sawyer is the Institute's principal economist.
The reductions required to get from where we are today to there would require 40 megatons of reductions a year. And we have no precedent for it, and we certainly don't have policy.
Emissions from the oil and gas industry actually rose in 2024, cancelling out any reductions in other sectors of the economy. Meanwhile, sectors like transportation, heavy industries, and buildings that have seen success in decarbonization also slowed their progress. The prognosis for the future doesn't look good either, as Ottawa pulls back from climate policies like the consumer carbon tax and electric vehicle sales mandate. But Environment Minister Julie DeBrusen says this doesn't mean her government isn't continuing to work on the issue.
There's going to be a climate competitiveness strategy that we're putting out. Very much the way we're approaching it. It's a moral obligation to fight climate change for the future.
The federal government has indicated that it will tweak policies related to large industrial emitters and is in talks with Alberta over oil and gas emissions policy. Inayat Singh, CBC News, Toronto.
That is World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, we are getting through this last week of summer. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us here on Thursday, September 18th. You're with Information Radio on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. This hour on the program, the mayor of the city of Winnipeg is going to join us for our monthly interview. We have a lot to talk about, from newly proposed encampment rules and certain areas in the city being off limits to protests. We'll ask about those things from the Winnipeg Mayor Scott Gillingham's point of view. Also, his calls for bail reform. Stay tuned. He will be here at about 7:45. Also, we're going to visit an inner city school in Winnipeg where kids have just received a bunch of books. It's part of a program that aims to share the magic of reading. But we begin this half hour with the Future of Sport in Canada Commission. They just released their preliminary report about racism in sport. We're going to talk to a local Métis athlete who says the Commission's findings on anti-Indigenous racism in sport specifically, what they found is, unfortunately, in her perspective, old news. So we're going to find out why and hear more. And you can probably guess. If you listen to CBC, then you've heard so much reporting about racism in sport in the last number of years. We're going to look back to 2021 and what local athletes here in Manitoba had to say about it then. And here we are 4 years later. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells. She joins us with news at Headlines Otherwise. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a woman is in hospital with serious injuries after being hit by the driver of a vehicle outside a Sikh temple. Happened Monday night as she was trying to cross King Edward Street. The Gurdwara there serves a growing population in northwest Winnipeg, and many people walk or bike to worship, and they all have to cross that busy road. Harpal Kaur Sidhu lives nearby and says the collision highlights a need for safety improvements. A Canadian free speech advocate is criticizing a Winnipeg proposal to ban protests in certain places. Winnipeg city councillors have ordered staff to study the idea of putting buffer zones around vulnerable buildings like schools or community centres. So-called nuisance protests would not be allowed within 100 metres. I'll be back with more Manitoba News at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thanks.
With the weather forecast, here now is Abby.
Good morning once again, Marcy. The south is going to be staying cool and damp with misty conditions spotted in the northern parts of the province today. 14 degrees still in Winnipeg, mostly cloudy outside. The day will be cloudy with a slim chance of showers, drizzle this morning actually, and then a good chance of showers late in the afternoon. Warming up to 17 degrees across the south. Similar conditions. We're seeing highs near 17 degrees today. Up north, Thompson, Churchill hovering around 8 degrees and a powerful influencing 12 degrees. But the south stays cool and damp and warms up to 17. Right now, Winnipeg, we are at 14.
Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk.
So far, it's been a very quiet commute. Haven't heard of any major issues out there yet. But if you do see something going on, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned, there is this new national report out. It says that Canada's sports system is broken. The Future of Sport in Canada Commission just released a preliminary report. One of the issues they identified is anti-Indigenous racism. In fact, every Indigenous community and organization the Commission spoke to, think about that. Everyone they spoke to in this country shared experiences of anti-Indigenous racism and taunting in mainstream sports settings. In 2021, you might remember a study that was done here in Manitoba, Anti-Racism in Sport, a study here. It found the majority of athletes that took part in that story experienced racism, they said, from slurs to threats. So that echoes what they found nationally. In fact, we reported, CBC did at the time, that some people stopped playing their sports because of all of this. And in case you're wondering what sports, we have stories that we've covered in youth soccer, in high school hockey, basketball. It's everywhere. My next guest says she wasn't surprised to hear the latest findings nationally. Jamie Menzies is a Métis athlete and the founder of Agujin Volleyball Club, and she joins us now via Zoom. Good morning.
Morning. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Didn't take me long to go back through our CBC stories and find so many examples of this in Manitoba and across the country, of course. Tell me a little bit about what we do with the information and why you weren't surprised.
Well, I wasn't surprised because, as you mentioned, reports have already been done, local reports, national reports, even the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, as well as the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and Two-Spirit people have spoken to this. That means that Indigenous people have been asked and forced to speak over and over and over about traumatizing experiences. And so the time is now to respond. I think that non-Indigenous people and organizations should be stepping up and responding to these reports. I don't think it should be on the shoulders of Indigenous people to solve racism and discrimination in sport. Already the labor of opening up about traumatic experiences is enough, in my view.
I was talking about threats, slurs. I'm looking at the reports, of course, and what athletes have reported. I'm just wanting to talk about that because then I want to talk about solutions to that on the field of play or the fields of play. What does anti-Indigenous racism and discrimination look like in sport in your view?
Well, there are certainly more overt examples of it. Relational racism between two people, name calling, things like that. So I've witnessed that. But there's also a lot more subtle kind of systemic things in place as well that just prevent sports spaces from feeling safe and inclusive to Indigenous folks. But also there's the issue of accessibility. And there are just things about mainstream sport that aren't and don't feel accessible to Indigenous athletes, but also coaches.
Can you give us an example of what you mean by that?
Sure. I suppose one example would just be, in some cases, cost. One example could be geography. A lot of Indigenous people in Manitoba live in the north or rural, or even in places without access to public transit in the city. And then the feeling of being safe, that just comes more down to language that is used in spaces, or having coaches and leadership that either are Indigenous or understand the Indigenous context of historic and current colonial impacts. I think that's really important for non-Indigenous folks to educate themselves so that they're coming into sports spaces and creating sports spaces that are understanding of the different experience that Indigenous folks have in Canada.
What options might we have, back to what I was saying about on the field of play or on the courts in this country and in our province, to really deal with this? Like, should we start making it, should we have real zero tolerance if you're to hear something like that in a venue? Because it seems to me that every time we do these stories, they just kind of float away. And maybe if it impacted the sport, the scoring, the team, we have red cards for athletes that in soccer I'm thinking about. But what do you think should be done to get ahead of it?
Mm-hmm. Well, if an Indigenous person is facing racism in sport, I believe that they can react however they need to keep themselves safe and out of harm's way. But I think that non-Indigenous people, and even myself as a white presenting Indigenous person, have to be assertive against racism when they see it happening, and also proactive to prevent even those sneaky discrimination cases of discrimination and those less obvious cases of language used in spaces. So I do think non-Indigenous people have to be active about it, assertive about it, proactive about it, and educating themselves and others.
So this is what you're talking about is person to person, like in whether it's on the field of play or in the stands, not looking away, standing up, stepping up.
Yeah, in those cases of relational racism, yes, and even sport bodies and organizations and governments can be tackling those non-relational examples, the systemic examples.
What is the impact? We obviously have reported on some of it, but in your view, the impact on Indigenous athletes that experience racism or discrimination, and the impact on, I guess, on the loss and the system?
Mm-hmm. Well, retaining Indigenous athletes is challenging. And if we aren't retaining Indigenous athletes, it's more difficult to develop Indigenous coaches, sport builders, sport leaders, decision makers. And, in the case of mainstream sport, we talk about providing it for fun and fitness and health and things like this. But in the Indigenous community, sport means more than that. It's a preventative measure against depression, a preventative measure against suicide, which disproportionately impacts Indigenous youth and especially girls and women. It's a preventative measure against human trafficking. These are the big things that we're talking about. We're not just talking about getting a sweat in and having a smile, even though that's important too. In the Indigenous community, sport means far more than that. It's a life-saving measure.
What did you see in Manitoba's sports system that inspired you to create a Gujin?
Well, what we've been talking today was my inspiration, really. I worked for the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and Two-Spirit people. And, it was really difficult to hear all of those experiences of survivors and family members. And so knowing that I have tools that I can use in sport and that sport does really save lives, that was the primary inspiration. But I will say too, I don't want to frame Indigenous athletes as impoverished. Being in the Indigenous sport environment is also a gift to me. I've learned a lot and I'm able to bring my whole self to the space. Indigenous athletes have a lot to offer, and so do Indigenous sport models. So I don't want to just paint Indigenous sport spaces as impoverished. There's a lot of richness there to be had and to be experienced as well.
Thank you very much for being with us with your perspective, Jamie. Thank you.
Thanks.
That's Jamie Menzies with us, Métis athlete and the founder of a Gujin Volleyball Club. If you want to read more about the stats and the stories that sparked our conversation, go to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
The night lights up with Arch in the Exchange, and After Dark will be there. Winnipeg, this is Odario Williams, and I will be spinning tunes for a special recording of After Dark, just outside of Art Space for Nuit Blanche, September 27th. Art, music, dance, all night. Nuit Blanche, proudly sponsored by CBC. Just visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for details.
7:22 a.m. and I keep saying this week is the last week of summer. We don't want you to feel too blue about that. It's pretty nice after all still. And also we got a tune that'll help. Australian electro-pop band Parcels has released a new album. It's called Loved. And this tune is called Leaves. Selfish director pick. Corey loves this one. Corey Funk would like the funk. That's a good tune, and it's happy too, right? I love that the most about it. That's an Australian group. They're called Parcels, and the tune's called Leaves. It's time for Morning Sports, and Scott Rickard is here with us. Good morning.
Hey, Marcy.
So what are you watching as training camps get underway this morning around the NHL?
Well, a lot of change and possible change where Canada's teams are concerned. In Vancouver, Canucks fans are fretting over the possible departure of superstar Quinn Hughes when his contract comes up after next season. In Edmonton, Oilers fans are doing the same with Connor McDavid, whose current deal expires after this season. And from a Jets perspective, Marcy, they also, of course, have a star forward heading into the final year of his deal. Kyle Connor has been eligible to sign a contract extension since Canada Day, but as of yet, no deal has manifested. There are reports that there's mutual interest between the team and Connor for getting a deal done. A couple of years ago, it wasn't until the eve of the regular season, remember, that fellow American star Connor Hellebuck signed his deal. Speaking about signings, much of the talk remains around Jonathan Toews. Asked about it earlier this week, defenseman Josh Morrissey said he's looking forward to having the probable future Hall of Famer with the team.
I grew up kind of idolizing JT, and I think back to 2010 when they won Olympic gold and then the Stanley Cup in the same year. I think just what he can bring into the locker room as a 3-time Stanley Cup champion, multi-Olympic gold, I mean, the list goes on and on. The fact that he's feeling good and coming in, it's exciting for us to add a player like that with that kind of experience, leadership, and ability.
Such a great addition. Jets will begin practice today, Marcy, with their first preseason game going Sunday against the Wild. Ready or not, here it comes.
Let's stay on the ice, the pebbled version. Our Canadian great is calling an end to his career.
Brad Gushue saying he's going to retire at the end of the season. A 2-time Olympic medal winner who's won more national men's titles than anyone ever in the sport. Gushue made the announcement in a video he posted yesterday on social media.
Years ago, I created a list of goals I wanted to achieve, and I feel like I'm among the lucky few who can say they've achieved them. That's given me the confidence to make this decision now, to leave on a high note with no regrets, no challenge left unanswered, and no expectation unmet. This has not been an easy decision. I've struggled with leaving it all behind. Curling is a game I love. I'll miss it more than I can express. Thank you for being part of this.
Gushue says he's eager to spend more time with his family. In the meantime, he says he'd love to stay connected to the sport in some capacity. Given his gift for the gab, I think broadcasting might be a fit. Gushue will compete in his 22nd career Brier come February, fittingly enough, in his hometown of St. John's.
And we still have a few days before summer is officially over. That's why we played that Leaves tune just now. Let's end with some warm weather sports news.
Yeah, although it's not great news where the Jays are concerned. Their 6-game winning streak came to an end last night in Tampa Bay. They still lead their division and their league by 4 games, though. And it's a big morning, Marcy, for Canada at the World Track and Field Championships. Andre DeGrasse, Aaron Brown, and Jerome Blake all just ran in their semifinals of the 200 meters. Unfortunately, none of them have gone through to the finals. The semis for the 800 meters goes in about 10 minutes. Edmonton's Marco Arop is the defending world champ there. Among others, Marcy, Arop's inspired CBC reporter Devin Heroux to try his luck in that race. And Devin shared his thoughts on running the 800 meters for media members in Tokyo.
I really have been watching Marco, how he builds into a race, and that's what I was channeling here today. Here's what I've always said about doing these media races, whether it's in the pool or on the track. You become very human very quickly. These Canadians, all of these athletes racing, are superhuman, and I proved that once again.
What Devin might not pull off on the track, Marcy, he does pull off behind a microphone and a keyboard. He was in Singapore in July covering World Aquatics, came home to Canada, got married in August, and then he's back in Japan covering World Athletics this month. Superhuman, just in a different way.
Nice little note on Devin. He's a great broadcaster. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You bet.
Coming up, we're going to be talking about books. We're visiting an inner city school. We'll take you there in Winnipeg, where kids have just received a pile of books. It's part of a program that shares the magic of reading. But right now, your CBC Manitoba News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it's 14 degrees. It's been a while since we've been normal. That's what we'll be today. A high of 17. The seasonal high this time of year is cloudy with a good chance of late afternoon showers. Some of the 4,000 modular homes the federal government plans to build will go along Keniston Boulevard in Winnipeg. A portion of the Naue-Odina site was chosen by the newly created Build Canada Homes Agency. Prime Minister Mark Carney announced Winnipeg is among 6 cities receiving those housing units. Shauna McKinnon at the Right to Housing Coalition says this city needs more low-income housing.
That is something actually that we've advocated for a very long time through the coalition, that we be using space in that area to develop housing.
McKinnon says it is important the federal housing units are built in places close to services. Some people in northwest Winnipeg are calling for improved pedestrian safety measures near a busy Sikh temple. This after a woman was hit by a driver while crossing King Edward Street Monday evening. The woman's family tells CBC she is in hospital with serious injuries. The Gurdwara is located on the west side of King Edward, but many people live on the other side and have to walk or bike there. Harpal Kaur Sidhu lives nearby and says there should be a pedestrian corridor closer to the temple.
There is no pedestrian crossing, and previous years there was not much population, but now all the nearby locality belongs to our religion, and they go to the Gurdwara on daily basis.
The city says its public works department has identified the need for upgrades along the road, but there's no money set aside for the project, and it isn't slated to happen until at least 2030. A proposal to limit where people can protest in Winnipeg is getting pushback from some who call it an attack on free speech. The city is studying whether to put buffer zones prohibiting so-called nuisance protests around sensitive places like schools and community centres. Vibert Jack is the litigation director at the BC Civil Liberties Association, and he says people have a right to protest.
It's very unsettling when politicians seem to be assuming that protest necessarily involves lack of safety, hate speech, these types of things, intimidation. Peaceful protest exists in this country. It's protected under the Charter.
The city's Executive Policy Committee passed a motion directing staff to come back with a draft bylaw in 3 months. Supporters of Jimmy Kimmel are coming to his defense.
Jimmy Kimmel stays, Trump must go! Jimmy Kimmel stays, Trump must go!
Fans protesting outside the Los Angeles studio where Jimmy Kimmel broadcasts his show. They are upset ABC has pulled the show off the air over comments Kimmel made about Charlie Kirk's death.
He had some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
Now, the protest over Jimmy Kimmel Live's cancellation is being countered by praise from U.S. President Donald Trump. Commenting on social media, he says ABC is courageous for pulling the show. Prime Minister Mark Carney is heading to Mexico today. He will meet with Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum at the National Palace in Mexico City. The two countries are trying to build stronger trade ties amid the U.S. tariff fight and ahead of the renewal of the North American Free Trade Agreement. You can hear more national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. A Manitoba man who was prescribed medication to treat his arthritis claims he suffered blood clots and other side effects from the drug. He is now suing the pharmaceutical company AbbVie that makes the medication called Rinvoq. In his lawsuit, he claims after he started taking Rinvoq, he had swelling in his legs. An ultrasound detected a blood clot in his left leg. About a year and a half later, he suffered another blood clot, the lawsuit claims. It says the patient's health care provider told him the clots were side effects associated with Rinvoq and advised him to stop taking it. The allegations have not been tested in court, and AbbVie has not yet filed a statement of defense. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thanks, Heather Wells.
Thank you.
Abby Adiemi now with your regional forecast here on CBC's Information Radio. Abby.
Good morning once again. Cloudy conditions with some fog patches lifting through the morning. The southern region staying cool and damp, while we're going to see more like bright conditions. The sun will break through in the northern parts of the province. Right now, Winnipeg still at 14 degrees, mostly cloudy conditions. We have a slim chance of showers in the forecast this morning, and then a good chance of showers showers later in the afternoon. We warm up to 17 degrees. Similar conditions we're seeing in the Pembina Valley region. Temperatures hovering around 13, 14 degrees, warming up to 16. Also a good chance of showers this afternoon. Brandon and the Westman region, we're seeing 13, 14s in that region. The mist still hanging around. That should lift as you get into the morning. Then we'll see cloudy conditions. That region also has a good chance of showers later this morning with some winds coming from the northeast. Temperature will warm to 14. In the Parkland region, we're looking at 12 degrees around Dauphin, Russell, Roblin. Light rain spotted earlier, but now it's going to stay cloudy with a good chance of more drizzle this morning as that fog lifts, and then the wind will change directions to the northwest. We're going to see some showers later tonight. Temperatures will climb to about 16. Gimli and the rest of the Interlake region, we're looking at cloudy conditions also there. 13 degrees right now. We have a slim chance of morning drizzle this morning, and then a good chance of showers in the afternoon, warming up to 17. The powerful influence around the areas 12 degrees, warming up to 17. Sunny breaks expected there. Thompson and Churchill mostly cloudy at 8 degrees. Winnipeg right now 14 and cloudy outside.
Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk.
Yeah, it's been a very quiet commute actually overall so far this morning. Haven't heard of any major issues, but if you're out there and you see something going on, if you're walking, biking, driving, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Now, just really briefly, we have a story coming up about literacy and reading in a moment, and I know that you, most nights, are sharing stories with your little guy.
Yeah, oh man, we are...
What's the go-to?
Oh gosh, these days, I mean, Three Little Pigs, man. Any Three Little Pigs. We went to the library a little while back, and he actually... They know him because we walk in and he says, "Do you have any Three Little Pig books?" He goes over to the librarian and they searched for every type of Three Little Pig. We've actually I feel bad because every time we go, he asks for Three Little Pig books and they find them and we read every version of Three Little Pigs you've ever read in your life.
So if you can't find it in your library, it's Cal's fault.
Yeah, it's at our house right now. You can give me a call on the commuter line and I will make sure it gets back to you.
Cutie patooties.
Yes.
Well, let's get to this story. A love of reading, of course, can open up the door to lifelong literacy. And it's why a Manitoba-based charity has been working to get books into the hands of children and their families. Over the last 21 years, Share the Magic book program has donated close to 800,000 books through schools and community organizations. CBC Manitoba community reporter Shanley Vidal was recently at Norquay School in Winnipeg's inner city, where books are distributed monthly.
Chris Melnick is dropping off another load of books at Norquay School in Winnipeg.
You brought all kinds of books for the kids. This is great.
Yes, I brought books for your resource center and I've brought school supplies.
Melnick founded Share the Magic 21 years ago. It's a program where books are distributed regularly through schools and other community organizations. Since then, close to 800,000 books have been given away across Manitoba.
I've received so much in my life that all I want to do now is give back, and this is a way I can do it. So knowing that they're being appreciated, that the books are being taken home and shared throughout the family, it's very, very positive.
Kim Melnick is a learning support teacher at Norquay School and specializes in literacy.
I feel like I get to be Santa Claus every month because I get to go visit all the classrooms and bring all these wonderful donations. How many have you read?
Almost all of them. Yeah.
Peyton Richard Pullman is a fourth grader at Norquay.
I just really like to read, so whenever I'm bored, I usually just read some of those chapter books.
Many of them get really excited when they see characters they know, so especially the younger ones, different Disney books, things like that. Peyton said Dogman is very popular.
It's about a dog and its owner, it's the police, and they got in a car crash, and they switch bodies.
Some kids really would rather watch TV or sit on their iPad or play games, but them taking the choice to spend time reading books, being engaged at school when they have free time in books in their room, looking at different opportunities of where they can improve their literacy and wanting to read and spending time with others reading books is just really exciting.
What's yours about?
Mine's about a kid that really likes basketball. Yeah, I used to just find books boring, so I didn't really like reading, but now I do.
Steve Norberg is in grade 8.
My Nana was actually, we were at a bookstore and she wanted to find me a book to read. And so we were just looking around and I found it and I thought it was interesting and I turned out to like it. And it's called Percy Jackson and the Olympians. I've watched the movie, yeah.
How does it compare to the book?
I feel like the book is actually better. Before I used to think movies were better, but the book describes it better and like what everyone's feeling and stuff.
I feel it's really giving them an opportunity to select books that they're interested in, that they're passionate about. Like Steve and Peyton both talked about having specific books they really love, and that kind of got their spark of reading going.
Share the Magic started donating books to Norquay School last year because there was a need to make reading accessible for students and their families. There isn't a public library within walking distance of the area. And this school also has a special place in the heart of Chris Melnick.
In partnership with this school, we were able to move over 6,000 books into the North Point Douglas community. And North Point Douglas is very special to me because it's where my dad grew up. That really means a lot. I wish someone could have done this for him when he was a little guy, because he was a great reader. I'm actually a librarian, and I really believe that literacy is so important. And if somebody can't read in this day and age, they don't stand a chance. So I thought if we can bring good quality books together and give them away completely free of charge in underserved communities throughout the province of Manitoba, that might help with some literacy levels.
Shanley Vidal, CBC News, Winnipeg.
By the way, Chris Melnick says that donations are always accepted. Books for younger readers are especially in demand. So if you're somebody that's been cleaning it out and your kids are older and you've got a bunch of books, there's a place for them. You can reach out to Share the Magic through Facebook. And thanks to CBC's Shanley Vidal, our community reporter, for that item, but also videographers Jason Empsom and Travis Colby.
The ocean is vast, beautiful, and lawless. I'm Ian Urbina, back with an all-new season of The Outlaw Ocean. The stories we bring you this season are literally life or death. We look into the shocking prevalence of forced labor, mind-boggling overfishing, migrants hunted and captured. The Outlaw Ocean takes you where others won't. Available on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
7:43 a.m. is the time right now. Coming up after 8, we actually have our medical column on today. Dr. Raj Bardwaj is going to be talking about something you might be doing this morning. Did you take pills last night, or maybe you have a pill routine in the morning, medication that you need to take? Do you take it with food, with milk, with juice? Well, this all might affect how effectively our medications work, of course, but a lot of us kind of overlook how we're supposed to be taking medications, even some pretty common ones you might be getting wrong, and that can impact your body and your health. So Dr. Bardwaj is going to talk about it after 8 o'clock here on Information Radio on CBC. Right now, though, at 7:43 a.m., it is time for our monthly interview with the Mayor of Winnipeg. Scott Gillingham is back for the fall for our regular monthly interviews, and he is in studio. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy. Great to be here.
Thanks for being here. You have headphones on because we're going to start with a clip, actually. This is about the new motion that was put forward by Councillor Evan Duncan, Charleswood Tuxedo Westwood. It's in the news this morning as well. That would make certain areas like schools, hospitals, community and cultural centres, places of worship, for example, off limits to protests. Now, Duncan says the bylaw mainly applies to, quote, nuisance demonstrations. We did, though, hear from Ramsey Zeid, who's president of the Canadian Palestinian Association of Manitoba. Here's what he said.
I think we're being singled out. I think we're being probably discriminated against. I think that they're trying to take away our charter and rights and freedoms to rally and protest freely.
So that's, of course, part of what he said. But what's your response to that idea that this is going to be discriminatory?
Well, so I support Councillor Duncan's motion. We're asking our staff to look at whether and where we could perhaps create some spaces that allow people their charter right to protest. That's a charter right that you can protest, you can assemble, but to put a few rules around that so that it avoids conflicts. This has nothing to do with any one particular group. If CBC has reported on it. If you watch what happened back during the pandemic, since the pandemic years, and since at that time and since then, the number of protests and rallies has only increased. If you ask the police, I sat on the police board for several years, and repeatedly our police would talk about how every year they have more and more resources going to attending and kind of controlling, as it were, putting perimeters around protests and rallies. And so this is only increasing, it seems. And so this is about getting some rules around it.
I just want to build on what you said there, so I'm sorry to interject, but is it about resources or is it about disruption?
It's more about disruption. My point is, the number of protests or rallies seems to be increasing, and so therefore this is would be some guidance around kind of where free protests could happen.
If the motion makes it through council, how would it be enforced?
That's part of what we're asking our staff to look at. So we're asking our staff to come back within 90 days on a bylaw that would inform council as to what could be possible and what might not be possible. So obviously, part of what will happen is our legal team will scrutinize this motion as well, and then come back to council with recommendations.
Because then you still need police to enforce it if it's going to be, right? You actually wouldn't get that resource back, because if people aren't honoring it, you'd still need people out there to make sure they're away from the school or the hospital.
But what you're looking at is this is part of the key to this motion is trying to avoid conflict. People have the freedom to protest, but we want to make sure that when people are protesting, you're not ending up into conflict potentially with others.
Just another question on this. I know that one of the things that came up was around the idea of labor protests, and we had heard that that labor protests wouldn't be affected by this, that they could be closer to the organizations where they might be outside, correct?
It all depends. I don't have the motion in front of me, but there is some specifics that Councillor Duncan put in the motion. And if I recall, it's like places of worship. I think it was schools, hospitals, perhaps. So there were some specifics within that motion of examples of where we would want to create a bit of a bubble zone, some distance around those locations. Again,
why would labor be excluded, though? I guess I'm trying to get at. To understand, like if labor's to be excluded, why would they be
I don't know
excluded?
specifically if they were. I'd have to go back to the motion. As I said, I'm sorry I don't have it in front of me. I should have brought it with me. I don't have it in front of me. But what we're asking, ultimately, we're asking our staff, including our city's legal team, to analyze this motion, bring it back. What we're trying to do is provide, obviously, people have the charter right to protest, to rally. We're not trying to take that away. All we're trying to do is look at certain areas that we could have try to avoid conflict that can happen in protests.
Have there been conflicts then beyond the increasing number of protests? Has there been conflict that has made you as mayor concerned?
I get calls to my office about people that believe there's been a conflict or cite a conflict over the years, and again, even before I was mayor. When I was city councillor during the pandemic, I mean, the number of protests and rallies really increased during COVID, those COVID years, and they continue on. So just to be clear again, this is not about taking away anyone's charter right. People have the charter right to protest. This is about just creating some safe spaces and trying to make sure that while people are protesting, as is their right, we're not running into conflict.
I want to go to another topic that you've been in the news for. You posted your first repeat offender bulletin this week. This is you trying to put pressure on the federal government in Ottawa for bail reform, citing some of the current cases that we've had in this province where people were out on bail and they're accused of crimes, including what happened at Unicity, for just one example, also Hollow Water as another. What messages are you hoping to send with this first bulletin, and what can you elaborate? I gave a little of your reasoning that you shared already, but can you elaborate on why you think this is important and the time for this?
Well, as you said, the federal government indicated they're bringing in changes to bail laws this fall. I'm glad to hear that. I actually had a conversation with Minister Sean Fraser, the Justice Minister of the federal government. I appreciated his openness, but until we see what those changes would be and whether or not they'll be effective, I'll continue to, keep this on the front burner. Winnipeggers have had enough. Manitobans have had enough. People that I talk to, people that are calling me, and councillors are frustrated because too often, and you cited a couple of examples just a moment ago. Too often when we see crimes and people arrested for a crime, and I want to be clear, everyone accused of a crime is, innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. But too often when we see those stories, we see that individuals are out on bail or they're breaching their court orders. And so I will continue to put pressure on the federal government until the laws change. But I'm not alone. I'm working with mayors from across this nation, the big city mayors, but Mayor Knox of Portage Prairie has been doing an important job of raising this issue. Mayor Jeff Fawcett of Brandon, the three of us, and Kathy Valentino of the Association of Manitoba Municipalities, all of us together have been working on this. We sent a letter together to Minister Fraser saying in Manitoba, The bail laws too often are not working, so we need changes.
I want to ask you about something you've already said on this as well, because it's not based in stats, as you know. So, like, we spoke to the Chief Justice of Manitoba's Provincial Court. That's like one of our top judges, right? And a longtime defense lawyer as well. Both said the vast majority of people released on conditions or bail do not reoffend. So defense lawyer Zilla Jones said she feels the current cases in Manitoba, while they're terrible, tragic, that they're sensational outliers somewhat because the stats don't bear out repeat offenses on bail. And then the top judge, I just want to make sure that I have all this in front of me. He was talking about the fact that he said of Chief Judge Ryan Rolston said only a fraction of the 40,000 charges issued last year involved people on bail. You have responded to this, Mayor. You've said you acknowledge the overall crime rate in Winnipeg's gone down. But you say what matters is the people's and the confidence in the systems have to stay in place. But isn't it important to base it on statistical data?
I respect, our judges. The Chief Judge Ralston, met him several times, have high regard for him. Respectfully, tell the people of Hollow Water it's working. Tell the people whose family members have been killed or victimized by someone who's out on bail when they commit their crime. It's not working enough. It's really good. It's very good that statistically more people behave themselves when on bail than not. But too often in this city, when we see violent crime committed and you read the story of the person who has been charged with the crime and you see the words breaching court orders, out on bail, for the victims in this city, for the victims in this province, it's not working. That's what I'm talking about. So if we need to strengthen the bail laws, which we need to do, so that the stats are even better and the number of people convicted or charged with a crime that they've committed while out on bail is reduced even further, that's what we're going after. That's great. I'm glad that it's statistically, more often than not, people don't commit a crime, but where they do, they leave in their wake victims, communities that are victimized, the innocent public that are victimized. This is about the people of Winnipeg. This is about public safety. It's about public safety for the people of this province and this nation. The bail laws need to change.
You can see, though, why it will be hard to argue it's about public safety with respect when it's not based on stats, because we put out police stats every year and we use that to talk about what is safe and what is not in our community. So it's a difficult argument to make with those statistics. That some might say that we could go down a path to changing our justice system and create more issues.
If the statistics bear out right now that more people than not, as you're indicating, behave themselves while on bail, that's good. But it's not 100% yet. So if we can make some changes to increase that percentage and make it that even more people behave themselves on bail, that's what we're going after. Because at the end of the day, with all due respect, this is not about the criminals. It's about safety for the people of this city. People have had enough. Again, you can give those statistics to the people of Hollow Water today. That won't comfort them in any way, because that was a horrific crime. And so we really need to take a look at where we can improve things. And right now, with the changes that the federal government will make to bail laws, I'm hoping that it will improve public safety in this city and beyond.
So just as a last question on this, in terms of other improvements, would you also like to see the resources improve for those who might be in the court and have a plan? Because right now, some of those bail plans don't actually have enough resources to meet the goals if somebody is struggling, because we don't have enough resources anywhere in Manitoba to be able to keep up with if they have a plan to get ahead of their addiction, for example, if that's been a factor in their crime.
Absolutely, and I appreciate you mentioning that, because I have said that. What I'm also, and I've told Minister Fraser, the Justice Minister, it's not just about bail reform. I am not, put people in jail and throw away the key. That's not my view at all. The federal government also needs to make investments in rehabilitation resources so that people do have the chance, when they're incarcerated, to get the help that they need to turn their lives around. And it can happen. I was at an event not that long ago, and someone told their story of being in and out of jail, incarcerated, and finally at one point, while they were incarcerated, they said to themselves, you know what, I've got young kids, I want to be the dad that I can be. And that was 2 years ago. They got the help they need while they were in jail, turned their life around with a lot of hard work. They're now employed. They've had a good job for a couple of years. their father. So change can happen. I believe change can happen in people's lives. So yes, the federal government also needs to make the investment in those rehabilitation resources.
Housing. We have 4,000 new affordable modular homes coming. Winnipeg on that list from the Prime Minister. Mark Carney announcing Build Canada Homes. Some are going along Kenaston Boulevard, we understand. CBC's reporting in a portion of the Nawayo-Dena site. Do you know where any of the other sites are?
No, not at this point. So I'm really happy that Winnipeg has been chosen, in the first round of this new Build Canada Homes program. Really, it complements the work that we have been doing over the last several years as a city to cut red tape on zoning and to create grants that actually have leveraged $1.6 billion in investment, private sector investment in housing and public sector investment in housing. So our staff right now, they're working with the federal government, trying to understand and get the details on this new Build Canada Homes program.
Will you consult communities of homes that are to be built in their area, especially given that right now you're getting a lot of pushback already for the other places that you're building through the other strategy and accelerator, where people are coming to City Hall saying maybe we don't want it in this area or that area, they don't feel it's a good fit. So are you planning consultation ahead of the choices?
Yeah, well, again, it's a federal program, so we'll look at what the requirements are. On the other matter, we're in the midst of a public hearing process, and there was consultation ahead of time before that public hearing process with community members, and now in the midst of a hearing process, I can't say much else because we're in the midst of it, except that part of our hearing processes is that the public can come and speak to the issue, either in favor or against the issue.
Last minute, if I may, and I'm sorry, but I know you're always gracious with your time. So the encampments and the rules to move people on, there are some, as you know, in encampments that say they don't want to be in shelters, and yet in the meantime, we don't have enough transitional spaces. Councillor Brawadi last week saying, let's get rid of all the encampments and let's have more transitional spaces. But you can't have everything. So I'm wondering whether or not you're negotiating with private developers right now to build more transitional spaces for people. Yeah,
so there's discussion that the provincial government is having on the Your Way Home strategy, and we're partners with them on that. And it includes discussions with private sector as well. I do know that it's both the public sector and the private sector. It's going to take all of us. And that encampment motion simply, I think it strikes a balance because it recognizes that some people, because there's not enough housing, they are going to be staying in a tent, for the time being overnight. But what it says is you just can't set up a tent anywhere. We can't have them in parks and in playgrounds and under bridges and near rail lines and roads.
How are you going to enforce it? Councillor Brawadi didn't really have a clear answer for that. So do we know how you're planning on enforcing that?
Right now, it'll be our bylaws officers. We have, bylaw officers across several of our departments. And so what our CAO, new CAO, Joe Dunford, is doing is working with our bylaws teams and our departments to prioritize enforcement. Again, this is going to come online in the next few weeks, but this is a change. We're just saying it's a balance. You just can't have an encampment anywhere that you want, and so we're going to bring bylaws in to enforce that.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Mayor Scott Gillingham here for our monthly interview. For the latest headlines and news, please go to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba. It is cloudy, 14 in Winnipeg. World Report's coming up here on CBC. And if you need us in traffic, 788-3093. A reminder, after 8 o'clock in World Report, we're going to have We're going to have Dr. Raj Bhardwaj on with our medical column, talking about the interactions that might happen between any medications you're taking and what you're eating and drinking. Stay tuned. That's after 8.
Today on Q.
I'm Talia Schlanger in for Tom Power. You might know Zasha Mamet as Shoshana from Girls. What? She'll share stories from her new memoir, including her grueling days auditioning for shows and why she compares being an artist to having a disease.
Who goes to get tacos on a date?
Q. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
You're having trouble getting back to your sleep routine after the summer? Turns out you're not the only one. We will look at sleep hacks, what works, what doesn't, and how to make sure you actually have a restful night. That's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young.
U.S. President Donald Trump is praising ABC's decision to suspend Jimmy Kimmel's late-night show. The network says the talk show host is off the air indefinitely over comments he made about Charlie Kirk's death. Critics say the move is a threat to free speech. David Frum was a speechwriter for Republican President George W. Bush. He blames the Trump administration.
This is not cancel culture because it's not culture. It's state repression. It's an order from the government. Here's the script you must read. If you do not read it, you will be taken off the air. Jimmy Kimmel didn't read it. He was taken off the air.
House Democrats are calling on the FCC chair, Brendan Carr, to resign. They claim the broadcast regulator pressured ABC to pull Kimmel off the air. Steve Futterman has more.
This is the comment on Monday night that led to Jimmy Kimmel's indefinite suspension.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from.
Kimmel never actually says that Charlie Kirk's killer is a member of the MAGA movement, but does suggest that MAGA members are trying to use Kirk's killing to help their cause. Just before last night's taping was to start, ABC said there would be no show. This fan was outside the studio.
It didn't happen this morning. It was like right before the taping started.
Trump was in the UK when the news broke. He celebrated on social media, saying Kimmel, who he has been feuding with for years, has zero talent. ABC's decision came after around 60 affiliates said they would stop carrying Kimmel's show indefinitely. Brendan Carr, the head of the Federal Communications Commission and a Trump ally, says late-night talk shows have changed.
They went from being court jesters that would make fun of everybody in power to being court clerics and enforcing a very narrow political ideology.
Democratic Senate Leader Chuck Schumer says the move sets a dangerous precedent.
Trump and his allies seem to want to shut down speech that they don't like to hear.
And last night on many ABC affiliates, instead of Jimmy Kimmel, the network ran an episode of Celebrity Family Feud. Steve Futterman, CBC News, Los Angeles.
Donald Trump says he plans to designate Antifa a major terrorist organization. The term is shorthand for far-left anti-fascist militant groups. Antifa is more of a decentralized movement, not a single organization. The U.S. president called them a sick, dangerous, radical left disaster. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer is hosting Donald Trump today at his country estate north of London.
Mr. President, let me welcome you again for this unprecedented second state visit. And it's a great pleasure for me personally to welcome you to my home from home here at Chequers.
The U.S. president is on the second and final day of his state visit to the UK. Trump is addressing a forum of British and American business leaders. He praised what he calls the unbreakable bond between their nations as the two leaders signed a deal aimed at technology prosperity. He and Starmer are also holding bilateral talks. Trade, along with the wars in Ukraine and Gaza, will be the focus of their talks. Prime Minister Mark Carney is on his way to Mexico right now. His trip is meant to renew ties with one of Canada's top export markets. As Catherine Tunney reports, this year is the beginning of a review process for the North American Free Trade Agreement.
The last time the leaders of Canada and Mexico met, Prime Minister Mark Carney walked away with a soccer ball. A reminder of something the three North American countries can agree on, hosting the World Cup next year.
An area where Mexico, Canada, and our third co-host,
yes, right.
the other president, we are totally aligned in our excitement, enthusiasm.
Finding more alignment is the name of the game today when Carney and Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum meet face to face. Government officials say the goal of this trip is to expand Canada-Mexico partnerships in security, infrastructure, energy, and, of course, trade, and to underscore support as U.S. President Donald Trump stirs up economic uncertainty on the continent, especially after Canadian politicians suggested Mexico be dropped from the trade pact.
Donald Trump tried to put a wedge between us. We took the bait.
Flavio Volpe is a member of the Prime Minister's Council on Canada-U.S. relations.
It's very important to meet Mexicans face to face and say we're co-invested in the future here. But like in any good long-term relationship, you're going to have days where you're at each other, but you're going to have each other's back.
A relationship that's never been more important with the Canada-U.S.-Mexico trade agreement up for review. Catherine Tunney, CBC News, Ottawa.
As the Prime Minister heads to Mexico, CBC News is learning more about the hunt for a Canadian thought to be hiding in that country. Ryan Wedding was once a Team Canada Olympian. He's now listed as one of the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives. As Thomas Daigle reports, Mexico's president is under pressure to do more to ensure he's caught.
We hope she will soon take action against major narco-traffickers like Ryan Wedding.
A senior U.S. government official recently demanding the Mexican president intervene to ensure the arrest of an Ontario-born fugitive. Authorities say Ryan Wedding leads a transnational drug trafficking empire linked to the notorious Sinaloa cartel, all while benefiting from high-level help in Mexico, according to the State Department's Cartwright Weiland.
The cartels and government officials are working in tandem to allow for him to evade capture.
Now, CBC News has learned Mexico has assigned its own federal agents to a task force hunting for Wedding. Months ago, his right-hand man was arrested near Guadalajara in a dramatic operation involving the Mexican Navy, who now appear likely to be involved in this search as well.
Ryan Wedding to the line.
Once an Olympic snowboarder, Wedding has a $10 million bounty on his head as one of the FBI's most wanted.
They will get him eventually.
Former DEA International Operations Chief Mike Vigil says it's not a matter of if the 6'3" former athlete is captured, but when.
If he is in Mexico, he's going to stand out.
U.S. prosecutors want Wedding extradited to face charges related to cocaine trafficking and murder. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Toronto.
The Israeli military says there has been a shooting at a border crossing with Jordan. Israel's ambulance service says 2 people have been killed. At this point, details are not clear. The IDF is investigating. The Allenby Bridge is a crucial crossing for trade between Jordan and Israel. In September 2024, a gunman from Jordan killed 3 Israeli civilians there. France's government is planning to make cuts in its upcoming budget. And today, workers are staging a nationwide strike. Some teachers, train drivers, pharmacists, and hospital staff have already walked off the job. Students are blocking the entrances to some schools. And in Paris, some metro lines have been suspended. Unions are calling for more spending on public services and higher taxes on the rich. As many as 900,000 people are expected to strike or protest today. A Nova Scotia woman says she no longer wants to die. Jennifer Brady wanted medical assistance in dying. There was no treatment for her disease in Nova Scotia, and she had been denied out-of-province care. But as Angela McIver explains, she recently had surgery in the U.S., with the province covering the cost.
For Jennifer Brady, this flight marks the turning point in a 6-year fight for her life.
It's been, a constant battle to get here.
Brady has lymphedema, a chronic disease that causes fluid buildup in her legs. After being repeatedly denied out-of-province care by the Nova Scotia Health Department, last May she applied for medical assistance in dying. Doctors went to bat for her, and then last fall came a major court win. A judge ruled she was treated unfairly by health officials, clearing the path for surgery in New Jersey this past July, paid for by the province.
Hey, Jennifer.
It's so nice to see you.
It's so good to see you.
Dr. Joseph Diane is a world expert in lymphedema care based in New Jersey. He's doing procedures every week that don't occur in Nova Scotia and are rare in the rest of Canada. His patient roster now includes Brady.
When you see a patient that's actually their life's been transformed, they've actually had a real improvement. It's a huge gift.
After a successful surgery, Brady is now back home in Halifax, moving around better than expected, and she no longer wants to die.
It's really scary thinking and looking back that I was in such a dark place, that I was contemplating that.
Nova Scotia has a new review process for complex cases, and the Auditor General has begun a formal review of out-of-province care, thanks to Brady's fight. Angela McIver, CBC News, Halifax.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. For news anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, everyone. How's your start of the day going so far? We're clicking through this last week of summertime. In Winnipeg, a little gloomy today. It's cloudy out there. It is 14 degrees. And we will update your conditions and the rest of the day's forecast in a moment. You're listening to Information Radio. This is your morning show on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa, as mentioned. 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. All the places you can find us, and maybe you found us already, obviously. Let's talk about what you might be doing right now. If your morning routine involves taking pills or medication, then our medical column today is for you. But we're going to hear from Dr. Raj Bhardwaj about food and medication interactions. There's some very common medications that a lot of people take, but you might not actually have read the labels, and maybe it could be more effective for you, or maybe it's causing health issues. That's our medical column this half hour on CBC. Before we get to that, let's go to Heather Wells in our news center.
Well, some of the 4,000 modular homes the federal government plans to build will go along Keniston Boulevard in Winnipeg. A portion of the Naue Odena site was chosen by the newly created Build Canada Homes Agency. Shauna McKinnon at the Right to Housing Coalition says it is important the federal housing units are built in places close to services. A Canadian free speech advocate has criticized a Winnipeg proposal to ban protests in certain places. Winnipeg City Councillors ordered staff to study the idea of putting buffer zones around vulnerable buildings, places like schools or community centres. So-called nuisance protests would not be allowed within 100 metres. We're going to hear from the BC Civil Liberties Association in our next local news at 8:30.
All right, thank you, Heather. Let's go to Abby Adeyemi now to find out more about the forecast. I mentioned maybe updating things.
Cloudy out there and those foggy conditions lifting in the spots where we have fog. But the south is going to stay cool and damp with those showers on and off, while we'll see brighter breaks in the northern part of the province. Winnipeg right now still stuck at 14, mostly cloudy outside. We have some drizzle that might be spotted in the city any moment from now, and then that will turn into a good chance of showers later in the day, warming up to 17. The Pembina Valley, the Westman, the Interlake region, we're looking at temperatures between 12 and 14 degrees. Most of the regions warming up to 17. Up north, we're seeing 9 degrees in Thompson and Churchill, 11 degrees at the Pas. Winnipeg, we are at 14 and some showers later in the day.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
It's time for the morning commute update with my friend Corey Funk.
Yes, we did get a call from Naomi on the commuter line. She says there's a stalled car eastbound Inkster just as you turn off of Keewatin, catching folks off guard. So do look out for that there. Other than that, it's been a pretty quiet commute. But if you're walking, biking, driving, you see something, give me a call on the CBC commuter line 204-788-3093.
Let's talk about going north for a second, shall we?
Yes, let's.
So in less than 2 weeks, I mean, not next Tuesday, but the one after, September 30th, you and I are going to be in Opaskwayak Cree Nation.
I'm really looking forward to it.
I am too.
Yeah, we just met with a lot of the community leaders yesterday, and there's a lot of really interesting things going on in that community.
Yeah, they really are. So this is obviously OCN, just across the bridge from the Pas, and this is part of our CBC Manitoba Communities in Focus initiative. So it always starts with a meeting. As as Corey just alluded to, we met with different leaders in the community and different folks to hear about what they want to share with you through CBC. And so we'll be sharing stories coming up. A really interesting place, like a lot of self-determination, a lot of governance, learning all about their treaties, their lands. Yesterday, learning they're not under the Indian Act. There's already a lot of autonomy around a lot of their systems. They're building out even more. So I'm really looking forward to it. Our show is on also Truth and Reconciliation Day. So we're in Shirt Day.
We'll be live from OCN that morning.
So we're looking for a location. If you're listening to us from up north, you can help us out too. So where do you think we should broadcast from? We have some ideas, as you can imagine, but please, you can always weigh in on the listener line. Also, I wanted Corey and I to talk about this a bit on the air because if you have a story idea for our group while you're up there, maybe you're part of the community, we'd love to hear from you too ahead of our visit. 788-3205 is where you can pitch some stories. Communities in Focus takes a team of journalists from CBC Manitoba all around the province, and this season we start in OCN. September 27th to October 1st actually is the dates for the whole team to be up there, though Corey and I have that live show on the 30th. And our CBC team includes Manitoba journalist Felicia Adam, as well as Austin Shobakiget, Travis Golby's going to be going as our videographer. And then community senior producer, Connection senior producer Nadia Kidwai leads our team. From our current affairs radio unit, Sierra Sanders is also going to be making the trip to OCN up there. So we're all really looking forward to seeing you in person. In Communities in Focus, though, when it comes to that, you can also tell us on our listener line where we should go next. So we're always looking for your ideas. Well, as I mentioned, if your morning routine involves taking any kind of medication or pills, then our column today is for you. Sometimes the food we eat does change the medicines in our bodies and how they work or don't. And with an increasing number of people taking supplements as well, like fiber, high doses of vitamins and minerals, and herbal concoctions, the risk of bad interactions may be on the rise. I spoke to Dr. Raj Bhardwaj about this on our medical column. He joined me yesterday.
Good morning, Marcy.
So just to start with a baseline here, how common are serious food-drug interactions? Have you seen them before?
Yeah, I have seen interactions before. I think a lot of times they just go unrecognized until they're really bad. So, for example, I remember seeing a patient who was on blood thinners, super stable on these blood thinners for many, many years, and then suddenly started having a ton of bleeding that wouldn't stop. And, we were like, are they taking more of their blood thinners? Did they accidentally take way too much? What's going on? Turns out that they hadn't changed their blood thinners at all, but what they had changed is that they had started taking some turmeric supplements. Because somebody had told them that was good for their circulation, maybe. And the problem is that turmeric at high doses interacts with blood thinners. And in this case, ended the person up in the hospital needing blood transfusions because they were bleeding too much. So luckily, most of the time the interactions aren't that serious, but I do think that they're pretty common and probably under-recognized.
How do food-drug interactions actually happen in our bodies?
Yeah, so sometimes food or supplements can change the way that medications get absorbed into your body when you take them. Another thing that they can do is they can change the way that your body gets rid of or breaks down the medicines. Sometimes the medicines end up sticking around longer and then building up to higher levels. And then sometimes it's a direct sort of the food gives you too much of an ingredient and the medicine was trying to kind of, downplay that ingredient or alter the function of that ingredient. But, a lot of food-drug interactions happen because of the way your liver works to break down our medications or chemicals. And then you can run into situations where the meds just sort of hang around longer or don't work as well because they get metabolized more quickly. And even something as simple as, do you take it on an empty stomach or do you take it with food can be important. And some medications are labeled that way, take with food or take on an empty stomach. And if it is, then you should really pay attention to that because that means that the medicine has been tested and there are differences if you take it with food or on an empty stomach.
What are some common interactions that people should be aware of?
Yeah, there's some that we've known about for a long, long time. So one of the common ones is leafy green vegetables, which are high in vitamin K, and certain blood thinners that work by blocking the function of vitamin K. So that interaction kind of makes sense, right? You're trying to block the function of vitamin K. All of a sudden, your diet is way higher in kale because kale is everywhere these days. And so you're getting a lot more vitamin K than usual. And that changes how well the blood thinner works. Another one that I think a lot of people have heard of before is grapefruit juice interacting with medications. It doesn't interact directly. It's a kind of an interesting one. Grapefruit juice changes the way that certain liver chemicals work. And those liver chemicals break down a whole bunch of different medications. So grapefruit juice can interact with a whole bunch of different medications. Some meds for blood pressure, cholesterol, some medicines that control your heart rhythm, medications for erectile dysfunction, even some of the over-the-counter antihistamines can interact with grapefruit. And even one glass of grapefruit juice can lead to like 50% lower levels of those liver chemicals. And the effect wears off, over a couple of days. And grapefruit juice isn't the only juice that does that. Pomegranate juice does that as well. So just beware of that if you're having it as a treat somewhere. Another one is milk. That can lower the levels of certain antibiotics, especially in the blood, by lowering how much gets absorbed into your gut. Basically, the calcium in the milk grabs on to some chemicals, makes it harder for them to get through your stomach lining and into your bloodstream. And usually pharmacies will label those antibiotics or whatever with a little sticker that says "do not take with milk." But, high fiber foods and fiber supplements can have a similar effect. The fiber can basically glom on to whatever medicine you're taking and make it harder to be absorbed and make it way less effective. So if you have a bottle of fiber supplement at home, like Metamucil or something, have a look at the label. It probably says on there that you should not take it within 2 hours of any other medicine.
What about alcohol? People often worry that they can't drink while they're on certain medications. Is that valid?
Yeah, so it is valid, especially when we do tests in the lab, where we have somebody sit down and say, okay, you take this medicine, we're going to measure its level in your blood. And then another person, we're going to, or later, we're going to give you, 1 unit of alcohol, like a shot of alcohol or something. And then we're going to do it again and see how it goes. So the problem is in real life, people drink differently than in a lab, right? So, somebody might just be having a glass of wine with dinner. Other people might be, on a pub crawl or something where they're drinking a whole lot, maybe on an empty stomach. So the real world situations are much less predictable, but there are some medications that we think don't interact well with alcohol. Specifically, there's an antibiotic called metronidazole, and the research has shown that under controlled conditions, if you have alcohol plus this antibiotic, you're going to feel poorly. And in terms of real world situations, though, it probably isn't as bad as it was in the lab. But again, it's one of those things where, alcohol, you should probably avoid it if you're on some new medications, and certainly talk to your pharmacist or your doctor and say, hey, I was hoping to have, a glass of champagne or a glass of wine or, a beer or something like that. Is it okay if I do that while I'm on this medicine?
Are there ever situations where doctors would use those food-drug interactions on purpose, like to make medicines more effective?
Yeah, there are a few examples of that. The most common one is iron supplements. We know that they're absorbed better when there's also vitamin C around. So we often tell people, hey, if you're taking iron supplements, take it with vitamin C because it gets absorbed better. Now, whether that translates into actually making your anemia better faster is probably not, but it's good, again, good in sort of a controlled scenario. There are also there's some research that some specific anti-cancer drugs might work better when people take them with foods that are low in sugar. So again, if you're on anti-cancer drugs, you can talk to your specialists about that. Say, is there anything I should be doing about my diet with regards to these meds? And then a lot of the time when we say, take a food with or take a medicine with food or without food or this or that, a lot of times it's not about making the medicine more or less effective. It's about decreasing the side effects, right? So a common one is anti-inflammatories like Advil. We will often say, if you're prone to upset stomach or acid reflux, make sure that you've got something in your stomach before you take the Advil. But the Advil actually gets absorbed faster if you take it on an empty stomach. So we're not doing that to kind of help the Advil. We're doing that to kind of help you and protect your stomach, right? So I think it's important to be aware that there are potential interactions between food, supplements, medications, and just take a moment, talk to your pharmacist about potential interactions, especially if you're going on to some new medication or if you've noticed a change in the effect of a current medication.
All right, thank you.
My pleasure.
That's our medical column with our columnist, Dr. Raj Bhardwaj.
It's Canada's most prestigious competition for new short fiction. The 2026 CBC Short Story Prize is on. Send in your best original unpublished short fiction. Up for grabs, cash prizes from the Canada Council for the Arts, a 2-week writing residency at the Banff Centre for Arts and Creativity, and your work published on CBC Books. Contest closes November 1st. For rules and more, go to cbcbooks.ca.
8:24 a.m. is the time right now, and we actually got a call here late in your drive on the commuter line, and Corey's in to tell us what's going on.
Yeah, I got a call from John. He says there's been a multi-vehicle collision on the westbound south perimeter just before Pembina. Now, he says that the cars involved in the collision are now kind of off to the side. Emergency vehicles are on scene, but cars are slowing down as they kind of go past there, and it is backed up. He said it took about 15 minutes to get from St. Mary's to Pembina. So very, very slow going there. And if you have any more details on that, you can always give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
All right, Corey. Well, I am thinking about my first car, which was my mom's hand-me-down blue K car. I also drove my aunt's fake wood-paneled wagon back in the day in the early 80s. My husband's had a red Civic when we first started dating back in the day. I also drove a silver Cavalier at one point. You, Corey?
Mine was a silver Ford Taurus. I called it the Silver Bullet.
I called my
parents'
Cavalier
car.
the Silver
Had a
Bullet.
plum interior.
Ooh, very
And
squish.
then we bought my neighbor's Corolla, a red Corolla, that only had, even though she had it for like 5 years, only had like something crazy, like 10,000 kilometers on it or something like that. So it was like brand new. She only drove it just like a little bit every day.
Corollas are kind of known for that a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Well, let's see if that factors into the lyrics of this tune, because we have Mise en Scene with us this morning. Their tune is Beige Corolla. Mise en Scene in Beige Corolla. It is 8:28 a.m. Let's get to what's coming up on the radio noon call. And Marjorie Dowhouse has popped in, and this is going to be something we can all answer the call in today.
What is your favorite season? Yeah. Fall, the official start of fall. I know for a lot of people, they think it's fall already because it's getting a little bit cooler out there. We've got leaves on the ground. It's back to school. But the official start of fall is not actually till next week. Well, there was recently a new book published, Seasonal Sociology. So we're going to talk about how we think of seasons here in Canada tied to, well, our social circles or what happens in our social lives. And there's an interesting chapter, a professor from the University of Manitoba is going to join us who contributed to that book about how pumpkin spice lattes and certain brands reflect certain seasons of the year. So you can even call in and let us know if you do like pumpkin spice lattes, because it's all out there.
I'm more your cinnamon gal. You know what? My favorite season was winter for a very, very, very long time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm now a walking stereotype because you often hear the older you get in Manitoba, if you spent your life here, then you're like, okay, winter's getting old.
Yeah.
But honestly, I like living here because I love the change. I love that we get all the seasons, right? We look like a poster card. You know, it's like if you have a stereotype of a season, we've got that season in Winnipeg.
Yeah. And we have 4 seasons here in Winnipeg. Some parts of Canada, which is interesting, we're going to touch on this today too, don't have all 4
They don't
seasons.
get it, yeah.
So how do you differentiate? What do you tie to the seasons? Give us a call. Let us know what you think. What's your favorite season today on Radio Noon after 12:30?
All right. Thanks, Marge.
Thanks, Marcy.
So that's between 12:30 and 1, the call-in portion of that local program over the noon hour. Join Marge. Just one more reminder of what Corey just mentioned, that multi-vehicle collision westbound South Perimeter near Pembina Highway. We did get a call on the commuter line, so we understand you're quite backed up there. 788-3093 if you've got a late in the show tip here. Right now, your 8:30 news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it is 14 degrees. That's where we've been all morning. We're not warming up a whole lot. In fact, we'll be seasonal. A normal high today of 17, cloudy with a good chance of showers late this afternoon. Some people in northwest Winnipeg are calling for improved pedestrian safety measures near a busy Sikh temple. This after a woman was hit by a driver while crossing King Edward Street Monday evening. The woman's family tells CBC she is in hospital with serious injuries. The Gurdwara is located on the west side of King Edward, but many people live on the other side and walk or bicycle there. Harpal Kaur Sidhu lives nearby and says there should be a pedestrian corridor closer to the temple.
There is no pedestrian crossing, and previous years there was not much population, but now all the nearby locality belongs to to our religion, and they go to the Gurdwara on daily basis.
The city says its public works department has identified the need for upgrades along the road, but there's no money set aside for the project, and it's not slated to happen until at least 2030. The site of the former Kapyong Barracks in Winnipeg has been selected as one location for thousands of affordable housing units the federal government plans to build across Canada. The site, known as Nawe Udena, will get some of the 4,000 modular units. Prime Minister Mark Carney announced Winnipeg's among 6 cities chosen by the Build Canada Homes Agency. Shauna McKinnon at the Right to Housing Coalition says the city needs housing everywhere.
The main issue for us is we want to make sure that, there's a significant number of units that are allocated for low-income households, and that there be ongoing operating funds to support that housing over the long term.
The federal government owns about a third of the Nawe Udena site. The rest is owned by a coalition of 7 Manitoba First Nations. A proposal to limit where people can protest in Winnipeg is getting pushback from some who call it an attack on free speech. The city is studying whether to put buffer zones prohibiting so-called nuisance protests around sensitive places like schools and community centres. Vibert Jack is the litigation director at the BC Civil Liberties Association. He says people have a right to protest.
It's very unsettling when politicians seem to be assuming that protest necessarily involves lack of safety, hate speech, these types of things, intimidation. Peaceful protest exists in this country. It's protected under the Charter.
The city's Executive Policy Committee passed a motion directing staff to come back with a draft bylaw in 3 months. A Manitoba man who was prescribed medication to treat his arthritis claims he suffered blood clots and other side effects from the drug. He is now suing the pharmaceutical company AbbVie that makes the medication called Rinvoq. In his lawsuit, he claims after he started taking Rinvoq, he had swelling in his legs. An ultrasound detected a blood clot in his left leg. About 1.5 years later, he suffered another blood clot, the lawsuit claims. It says the patient's healthcare provider told him the clots were side effects associated with Rinvoq and advised him to stop taking it. The allegations have not been tested in court, and AbbVie has not yet filed a statement of defense. In an era of rising polarization and political violence, a group of international researchers is exploring a different path: inclusive peace. They talked about their work designing inclusive peace yesterday at Brandon University. Alison McCulloch is the political science at BU. She says the goal is to understand how divided societies can create stable and democratic institutions after conflict.
It feels pretty urgent, right? The world is an increasingly more violent place, and we're having less and less. So I think there are 61 active conflicts in the world today, and we're seeing less and less comprehensive peace settlements.
McCulloch says they continue to compare case studies around the world to find ways to build common ground and promote peace. You can find more on all these stories as well as other news as it develops through the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather Wells.
Thank you.
Abby.
Yeah, it's going to stay mostly cloudy for most of the day in the south, while we'll see some sunny breaks up north. We warm up to 17 down south. The north would see close to 17 also. Winnipeg right now 14, warming to 17.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Corey Funk.
Westbound South Perimeter, just before Pembina, there's been a multi-vehicle collision. We last heard from John that there were emergency vehicles on scene there. The cars are kind of to the side of the road, but still very slow going through there, backed up potentially all the way to St. Mary's, even further. It took about 15 minutes to get from St. Mary's to Pembina.
Time for some thank yous, starting with our live team here at the show. So Brad Lillies, as well as Joshua Taifair, as well as Corey Funk and Abby Adiyemi. Thank you, guys. Our live team in our news center, Heather Wells and Megan Ketchison this morning. And then I want to thank also the associate producers who had work in today's edition of Information Radio, your morning show. Sierra Sanders, big thanks to you. Also thanks to Marshall Hodgins and our community reporter, Shannalee Vidal. In unit, our show's producer is Nellie Gonzalez. Thank you, Nellie. And big thanks to Leif Larson as well, the senior producer of audio at CBC Manitoba. We aren't here without you, so thank you everyone for listening. Appreciate you, and take care. Be well. Have a great rest of your Thursday, and we'll talk to you tomorrow as we round out the week. Coming up next on CBC, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.